And we're ready whenever you are, Mayor.
Good evening, and thank you for attending tonight's City Council meeting. For those who are attending remotely, cameras in the council chambers is set up to show those attending in person tonight. Platform we are using has a raise hand feature. You will notice a picture of a hand in the right upper right-hand corner. When you reach the point in the meeting where the public has the opportunity to address council, you can click that button and be given your opportunity to address council. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Skelly,
Here.
Counselor Dilaba,
Here.
Counselor Fisher.
Here.
Counselor Kennedy. Here. Counselor Powers,
Here.
Counselor Reish.
Here.
Counselor Scamperly.
Here.
Quorum present.
I'm gonna just move things around a little bit to start on the agenda, and I'm gonna start with department updates. We have Andrea Smith, and then development first.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on things other than planning, but more focused on code enforcement and the assessment departments. So we, in 2021, we just recently completed our 2020 annual report for building codes. So in 2021, there were 2 new construction permits for 2 new residential structures. Those happen to be the 2 new houses that the land bank constructed. We issued 159 permits for additions, alterations, rehab and repair, and 99 miscellaneous permits, which includes HVAC permits, pools, permits for accessory structures, and other similar things in that vein. There were 14 completed commercial construction projects, and there were 383 complaints, code-related complaints issued to the department. Since completing our foreclosure this year in June, typically they're in June, it was in November 30th. We acquired 11 properties with structures. 2 properties are pending the completion of evictions. 8 hazardous building material surveys have been completed, and 4 of those are recommended for demolition in place. And by Friday afternoon, we just received a Department of Labor approval of our variance to allow us to do demolitions in place should this council elect to do so. We also completed asbestos surveys and hazardous building material surveys on 4 additional properties, 3 of which are city-owned properties: 115 Lake Street, 720 Mechanic Street, 1000 Jefferson Avenue, as well as the fire structure at 402 New York Avenue. We are pursuing Article 19A using zombie funding on 3 properties right now. That is a very simplistic way of thinking about it, is a way to short circuit the foreclosure process, which for the city of Ogdensburg is a 2-year process for properties that have otherwise been abandoned by the property owners. We're wrapping up the first of those 3. It's been a long process, but sometimes property owners continue to pay property taxes while they do not comply with property maintenance codes and maybe don't live here and have otherwise abandoned the property. So we're using some of our grant funding to pursue Article 19A to see if this is something that would be worth the city's investment in the future. So we're wrapping up the first one, and it's been a lengthy process, but I think it is coming to a conclusion, which will be to the benefit of the city. And we're going to attempt this on 2 additional properties. Wrapping up things related to building code. We have transitioned in 2022, to a new software platform for issuing permits and otherwise operating the code enforcement and planning operations. And that is iWork. It used to be IPS or BAS. You may have heard those terms in budget years. We are now using iWork. Messina and Potsdam also use iWork here in the county. This will allow us, among other things, to streamline our applications from everything from site plan review and variance applications to building code permits. So those will all be available now online in two different manners. One is a fillable PDF, which is a very basic opportunity for residents and contractors. The second is an online portal, which will allow contractors or homeowners to apply directly into our system. So it saves us even the step of inputting their information. So two options going forward, and we're getting ready to roll that out to the public here in the next couple of weeks. So that's a pretty exciting improvement for residents and contractors as well as city staff. We have resumed our rental inspection program, which was on hold during COVID. So really happy to get that back up and operational for the benefit of our renters here in the community. And Don McCarthy has been a huge help in assisting the code enforcement officers with that. Shifting gears a little bit to assessments, today, May 9th, is the tentative roll date for the city of Ogdensburg, which sort of is the very first, well, it's the second, I guess, in theory, important date on the assessor's calendar. The first is the taxable status date, which is April 1st for the city of Ogdensburg. That's the date that you have to have all of your STAR applications in and things of that nature. The second important date is May 9th for the tentative roll, which sets the rest of the calendar in play. The next big date is grievance day, which is June 14th. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions that y'all might have with regard to assessments, codes primarily, but if you have a question about recreation or planning, I'm happy to answer that too.
I have a question. So you said that we received a variance to demolition in place?
From the Department of Labor.
Oh, Department of Labor. Okay. Maybe I don't have a question.
The Department of Labor is the entity in New York State that regulates asbestos abatement, everything asbestos.
Oh.
So in order to do demolition where you have asbestos, you either have to do abatement, but in some instances, it is not cost effective or safe to be able to do that abatement process prior to doing demolition. So the most cost effective solution, if you're entertaining multiple demolitions, is to obtain a citywide or community variance, which the city has never obtained in the past. It's good for 1 calendar year, and it applies to any demolitions that the city undertakes where asbestos is present and cannot be safely abated. So it lays out the conditions that we have to abide by. It provides some efficiencies with that process, and we don't have to bring each and every property back to the Department of Labor for review in this calendar year.
So would that apply to homeowners as well?
It only applies to the city of Ogdensburg. Yes.
So if you have you want to get a building permit, you can now do that online or soon you'll be able to?
You can do it online now, but online now there's a PDF and it is not a fillable PDF. So it's a little cumbersome. If you don't have like Adobe Professional, it's a little hard to fill out online. So most people print it out, fill it out, scan it back in, or bring it in person. So it's a little cumbersome. This is a much more streamlined approach. So it's a fillable PDF. You don't have to have anything fancy to fill it out right online.
Good, that's great. And I saw today we were going for an RFQ for the Main Street project.
Yes, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up today.
So my assumption has been that was already designed and was part as an alternate to the main project. So I was just wondering about that.
Yes, yes, and yes. So we did receive federal funding through NBRC for the Main Street pump station. That was designed initially through as an alternate to the city's capital project at the wastewater treatment facility. There's been some changes minor changes to, I guess, what we will be doing there. But because we have federal funding, we have to abide by the federal procurement regulations, and we have to do a public bidding process for that. You may recall in previous updates, I think my last update to the council, this was one of the issues identified as a little bit of a challenge. We did make an attempt to have NBRC review our own procurement language as well as the federal procurement language in an effort to do a sole source procurement agreement with EDR, who is the primary engineer for the capital project at the wastewater treatment facility, but that was not ultimately successful. And so in an effort to keep that project moving, we've elected to go ahead with an RFQ. We'll review all proposals. Hopefully EDR will submit a bid, or not a bid, but a response, and we'll consider all of them that we receive back.
So whoever is most qualified, I mean, they aren't gonna reinvent the whole project and redesign it, right? Our hope would be that it'd be EDR or someone could use their drawings. I don't know.
Well, they would have to do their own drawings. We don't have ownership of EDR's product, which actually came from GHD initially. When we started the project, we were working with GHD. When we really started, we were working with C2AE, but that goes pretty far back. So we've been through multiple iterations of engineering firms, and whomever we choose to work with based on the response we get from this request for qualifications will be responsible for the engineer drawings. There obviously would be some efficiencies in cost if we are able to, and the council chooses to go with EDR, but they have to submit a response first, though.
So we don't own plans that we hire someone to do?
That part of the project wasn't ever awarded, and so we don't own them.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, Andrea, I just have one quick question. It was at the beginning of your presentation. How many did the city acquires of properties?
We acquired, what I was specifically talking about was properties with structures. There were 11.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Never mind.
Thank you. Next department update will be the DPW, and that'll be Shane Brown.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Down at DPW Streets, we have 24 funded positions. 2 are off on long-term injury right now. I'm going to do projects completed in April and March. This was set last month, and the meeting got canceled. So in March, we only had 1 water break, cutting snowbanks and corners back, water service repairs, sewer repairs, room rate renovations at City Hall have been completed. We're out cold patching, moving and cleaning out of the 2nd floor of City Hall, securing condemned properties, ice removal, and cleanup at the ice rink. April water sewer services, getting the parks and ball field maintenance ready for the season. Cold patching, the blacktop plant will open next week, so we can put some hot patch in potholes and hopefully they'll stay a little longer. We've completed the spring sewer main flushing, building maintenance. We've swept through the city twice. Once we're done picking brush up, we'll go back at it again. Removed all the snow equipment and then had to put it back on for one blast we got in April. We've installed the hydrant. We got the marina ready to open. I don't know if anybody's been down to see the work that Paris did. They did an excellent job this winter for us on that project. They put the pigeon netting up around the Dubisky Center, so they're keeping them off the main patio. They've found a new home on the other side of the building that we got to put netting around now. Ongoing maintenance, equipment maintenance, street, parks and trails, catch basins, and building and grounds. For the plants, we have 6 funded positions. We've just had 4 employees pass their 2A water course, and 1 employee passes 3A sewer license. Work that was completed in March and April are all monthly bacteria samples, the daily water quality sample reports, all monthly work orders completed, building and ground maintenance, monthly DOH and DEC reports, the filter cleanings, annual water withdrawal permit, annual entry point samples, quarterly disinfection byproduct samples, an annual pre-treatment report. On then ongoing building maintenance, filters cleanings, we will start spring cleaning at the beginning of June. Where they take them all down and clean all the sand for the winter months and put it back in. And there we are working on replacing outdated valves inside the filter system that's no longer working in the regulator building. We have 2 or 3 12-inch valves that we got to do confined space entrance to do to get them replaced.
Pretty busy.
Yes,
Who does the testing? Do our people do that, or does Dank do that? or-
we do the testing, we'll send them out to a lab.
Thank you. We have several presentations tonight. We will begin with City Manager Stephen Jelling.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I wanted to get us started tonight by a little bit of a historic recap. As we all know, there's several significant initiatives to be addressed tonight. And I wanted to recall council to a few years back of where we've been with our finances and the processes we made. Recently, Councilor Powers stated that there's been no evidence of financial vulnerability in the last 5 years. I don't know how possible any member of council could say, think, or believe that. So my appeal tonight, obviously, with the resolutions is to have council accept that it is time Ogdensburg looks at doing things different. We cannot continue down the path of 1 year at a time, one department at a time. In 2016, Sarah Purdy made her address to council. She was very clear in her memorandum to council. The words fiscal stress or distress are mentioned 4 times. She discusses very long and lengthy, almost the exact same words that I'm asking council. Proposed 2017 budget reflects the need to restore and rebuild the city's eroding financial foundation. This is a challenging task, particularly when the city's wastewater treatment plant is in deplorable conditions. Fund balances have been depleted. I think that we've talked ad nauseum about where the city's finances are and where they've been. But that's the first indication in 2016. In 2017, this council passed a unanimous resolution to ask the Financial Restructuring Board to make an assessment of the city and make recommendations. You have to meet pretty significant conditions, not the least of which is you have to be in some level of financial distress. That resolution was accepted by the state. In 2018, in an address to council from the city manager, updating the council on where we were with the Financial Restructuring Board getting here, which was certainly longer than she would have liked. She writes, ever since submitting our comprehensive review last May, I've been suggesting that the city take proactive approach to review so that rather than waiting for results of the review, we bring to the FRB's attention prior to review the actions we believe are essential to helping solve our fiscal stress. We need to adjust our organization structure and operations because continuing with status quo will put the city at its constitutional taxing limit within a few fiscal years, and we need to ask for assistance. Among numerous topics, she specifically talks about the fire and police departments. The collective bargaining agreements with both police unions and fire will expire at the end of 2019. I suggest the city needs an outside consultant or consultants to review the current structure and operational demands of the departments in order to determine if there are different structures that would more efficiently meet the operational demands of the departments. Shared services. I'm suggesting that using an outside consultant, the city conduct a study with the county to see if there are any services the county could provide for the city in order for the city to reduce its operating costs. The study would include analyzing what basis of cost would be for the county to bill. The city cannot expect these services from the county for free. In 2018, the New York State Comptroller's Office notified the city, based on the review of the city's 2018 constitutional tax limit, we note your city has exhausted 89.63% of its limit. Without exclusions, the city would be at 100% of its tax limit. Based on our experience, the city is currently considered to be in the high-risk zone. June 24th, 2019, Mayor Ashley. The city's population has declined since the 1960s, and I suggest a feasibility study to see if Ogdensburg should become a village. June 21st, 2019, just prior to the Financial Restructuring Board issuing their report. Good evening. I had a brief chance last night to look at the draft report. Is it possible to withdraw and keep working for another year? Unfortunately, I can see already the report contains several inaccuracies on our opinion. Additionally, of the utmost importance, the report is written will kill the city's chances of obtaining the DRI this year because recommendations, many of which are things the city has already tried, make the city look like we don't know what we were doing. This is a very competitive grant. It will sink our chances of getting it. June 26th, just a couple of days later, the state issued their Financial Restructuring Board report that I know you're all familiar with, and it talks about the level of financial distress that the city is in and the jeopardy it's in. I've got a couple of news clips I'd like to play. Mayor, I'd ask for your continued patience and allowing me the latitude here. I'm trying to demonstrate to City Council that on more than one occasion in the last 6 or 7 years, Council has been made well aware of the financial stress that we're in by multiple city managers, and it's time we take action. Kathy, would you please play a clip from 2 July 2019?
As the city of Ogdensburg attempts to solve its long-standing money problems, 7 News reporter Garrett Donlewski tells us the Maple City may not be a city much longer.
City officials in Ogdensburg have big decisions to make. The city has been handed a list of 6 areas where it can save money in the face of the financial abyss.
We asked for the comprehensive review because we knew we were in financial distress.
The review comes from the state's Financial Restructuring Board for Local Governments. Most of its recommendations boil down to expanding shared services, primarily with St. Lawrence County. With tough choices ahead, City Manager Sarah Purdy is also testing the idea of changing forms of government, making Ogdensburg a village, not a city, a suggestion she also made a couple of years ago.
At that time, there didn't seem to be too much appetite for it, which I can understand, but we're that much closer to going off the cliff financially, so to speak. So it's probably going to be more palatable this time.
As a village, many of the services Ogdensburg provides will become county responsibilities. It wouldn't be a simple switch. Purdy says a study would have to be done and a referendum would be held. Now, the state also suggests that the county take over dispatching for city fire and police. The city manager has floated the idea of the county taking over fleet management as well, saving the city money on repairs and other maintenance to vehicles. Other recommendations were made concerning labor and healthcare efficiency. That includes state proposed cuts to fire department staffing and potential restructuring of a hazard pay clause in the fire union's contracts. The final suggestion relates to management of blighted properties. City Council will discuss the report at its meeting next Monday. Garrett Donlewski, 7.
Kathy, would you please play a clip from 9 July 2019?
A hard look in the mirror last night. Ogdensburg city leaders reviewed a list of recommendations from the state to help get the city out of its long-running money problems. 7 News reporter Natalie Butchko was at last night's council meeting and has more.
The city of Ogdensburg is in financial distress and has been trying to get out of its money problems for years. At the end of June, the state's Financial Restructuring Board for Local Governments released a list of recommendations for the city.
So we woke up a while ago, but it is a continuation of the need for us to work diligently. And it's also a good way for the public to understand why it is that some of the things they wish we did we're not able to do.
Not everything the state recommended was talked about equally. Briefly discussed was how the city manages its vehicles, as well as the state's recommendation to have the county handle dispatching for the city. What was barely touched on was the state's advice to reevaluate staffing levels in the city fire department. The city manager did not go deeply into that, because she says it needs to be discussed in collective bargaining with the union. The city doesn't have to do everything suggested, but it will take a long, hard look.
There's no requirement that we pursue them, but I don't think we would have gone to the depth of having them come in and work with us for over a year if we weren't prepared to look into some of their recommendations.
Most of the suggestions revolve around shared services with the county, and that's where much of the conversation was centered. The question posed by the city manager, should Ogdensburg be a city, or could it become a village or part of a town?
Whether we become a village or a town for certain functions, it would have to be transferred to another government entity because there are things that villages and towns don't do.
Council members would like a study done, which could take up to a year. Going forward, Purdy says she'll continue to weigh pros and cons of the recommendations made in the state report and then present those findings to City Council in August. Natalie Kutchko, 7 News.
November 6, 2019, based on a review of the city's finances for 2019, the constitutional tax limit, we note that your city has exhausted 87.3% of its tax limit. Without exclusions, the city will be over its tax limit by 1.2%. New York State Comptroller. New York State Comptroller, November 2020. Based on a review of the city of Ogdensburg's constitutional tax limit, we note your city has exhausted 87.6% of its tax limit. Without exclusions, the city will be over its tax limit by 3.5%. Your city remains considered high risk zone. I think we can all agree that in 2020, with the significant reductions in the property tax rate and reductions to staff, the council was more than informed that things needed to change. November 2021, city manager and comptroller gave the 2022 budget brief. I've sent all that to you for your review. I think in there you'll see clearly the recommendations that we've called for, the actions that we said were necessary, and we gave you a history of each of these functions, debts, revenue, and projections of where they were going. Most notably in there were priorities that we established. And I think, again, without reading those, you all see that they're there. February 28th, 2022, this year, we gave the 2021 financial closeout and the 2022 State of the City brief. Again, council was provided with all the financial information, where our money was going, how our taxes are being spent, what the impact would be if we got just 25% of the properties that are tax exempt back on our tax rolls, 50%, 100, etc. What was also most notable in there is a discussion about debt and the projection to council that as of right now, we are likely $600,000 to $700,000 to $1.2 million deficited going into 2023. The last page on that presentation is a series of recommendations, all of which we've discussed almost none since that time, and now you all will have in front of you tonight for resolutions. I'm asking council tonight, put aside whatever the petty differences are. Put aside whatever the singular championing and causing you're doing, and understand that we have a responsibility now to take care of a city that has long been in financial distress. We have long been taking in or spending more money than we've been taking in. We used our fund balance up until 2016-17 to pay the gap in our general fund budget. We took money from the water and sewer fund to pay pensions for employees that didn't work in the water and sewer areas. We've used all the tricks of the trade to offset and make up for the fact that we just can't accept that we have to have a different organization with a different structure. It's not affordable. Even with the drastic cuts of the last couple of years, we're still gapped. There's still a deficit. And people can say, well, why did you cut taxes? We cut taxes because we were at the ceiling of our constitutional tax limit, with no knowledge that post a pandemic, our property values would see a resurgence, and actually our assessable value is going up, which is a good thing. But our property taxes are still too high. We were amongst the highest in the state. That's how we got the financial restructuring board here. So our solutions come down to re-raise taxes, which I sincerely doubt is popular with the majority council since we just spent the last 2.5 years reducing taxes. I doubt the minority council is up for any further staff reductions or cuts in programs because we've also exhausted the appetite for that. The fund balance has reached a decent level in really the last 2 decades. The comptroller will talk about that tonight and how much money is in there, what is usable, what is not usable. But it certainly isn't open for use to balance the budget. Did we really spend the last couple of years making cuts to harness money, to put into investments in the city, only to put the money back right from where we took it from to begin with? It doesn't make any sense. Those are the three options. That if council doesn't begin to act on some other initiatives, some different ways of doing business, we will always be stuck in raise taxes, cut staff, or rob the fund balance until there's nothing in it. That's it. Rob from Peter to pay Paul. Deplete your water and sewer funds so when you have a 50-year rehab that needs to be done, you have no money for it. You're borrowing $35, $40 million for your sewer plant because we didn't save a dollar for it. We used the money in there to pay for the daily operating expenses that we just can't afford. We have a similar project coming with the water fund or with the water plants. We have nowhere near the money in the reserve to fund that. That'll be another 10, 15, $20 million long-term bond project put on the taxpayers, put on the ratepayers, and cause a drastic increase in the water rates. Because we didn't save the money, we used it to offset expenses in the general fund. Something else that Sarah Purdy identified right away in her tenure. I've largely told council about nothing new that they haven't heard before. The question tonight will be, is council ready to take action? Is council ready to dig in, roll up their sleeves, and start to take definitive action? Or are we going to just maintain 1 year at a time, one budget at a time, one argument at a time, how we get something passed? Angela?
Thank you, Steve.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. To follow up on Steve's presentation, one of the things I'd like to start out with is discussing your $6 million anticipated fund balance for the close of the 2021 year. It is true that the Government Financial Officers Association, of which I am a member, does recommend that a municipality maintain about a 17% fund balance as a minimal. And I ask, is it proper for Ogdensburg to be at the minimal? So I would argue no, given some of the challenges that are in the city budget and anticipated to continue within the city budget for the next 5 years or longer. If we were to set as a council, if the council was to set a reasonable fund balance in excess of the GFOA's 17% recommendation, just for purposes of presentation, we could set that number to be 20%. So 20% would say that based on our budget, we should have a $2.6 to a $2.7 million minimal fund balance to maintain the city coffers. That leaves a surplus, if you will, of fund balance mathematically based on the $6 million of $3.3 million. So the question becomes, why would we harness $3.3 million in the city fund balance as of December 31st, 2021? And I'll give you the answer to that. But before I do that, I want to walk you through the 2022 budget, 2023, and some of the challenges that I see financially here in the city. 2022, prior to budgeting for lost revenue out of a one-time program, the ARPA funding of $535,000 approximately, the general fund budget had a $600,000 deficit, a little over $600,000. We closed that budget again with a one-time revenue that will not repeat of $533,000, and we appropriated $74,000 of fund balance. Sir, it does not solve the problems going into 2023. So one of the other challenges that we have in the city is knowing what the sales tax revenue should be budgeted at. We have a current budget of $3 million. We need approximately $250,000 of sales tax revenue a month to meet that budget. The challenge that we have with sales tax, the way the state distributes that money, the city won't see one full disbursement cycle until May of 2023. So even when we move into the 2023 budget, we still are unaware of what 1 year of sales tax collected looks like to the city of Ogdensburg as we collect that on our own. Also, I believe in November 2022, the sharing of the 0.5% with the county ends, but that's another topic just because their agreement ends. So when I did your financial briefing in February 2022, I presented you with a chart that showed a 5-year run of expenses and revenue. That chart based on revenue increases of 4%. And in looking at the history of the city, that's an aggressive increase. It took into account the salary increases that are mandated by the contracts. It also accounted for a 7.5% increase of health insurance costs citywide. I would argue that in today's environment, 7.5% is a very conservative number. And it also took all the other expenses in the general fund and raised them by 3%. March 2022, the economy closed with an 8.5% inflation rate. This is the largest inflation since December 1981. So certainly our current year budget is being strapped by this inflation, and the future anticipated budgets will also be strapped by this inflation number. The general fund budget also relies about $880,000 on money coming in from the water and sewer. It's well known that this needs to be cut back. And so that is an initiative that we're looking at for 2023. Looking at the ARPA funding and the sales tax money, those items there represent almost 1/3 of your budget. So it is no small matter when we talk about the need to generate revenue to cover expenses. One of the other challenges that we have in the budget is I've looked back more than 5 years into the budgets, and I've never seen where the city has done a direct budget for a transfer for capital projects. When the council approves a capital project, there's often a city match on that. If I can just throw out an example of a recent one would be the sewer pump stations, $1.8 million project, $1 million of grant funding, $800,000 of city's obligation. That money has to come from somewhere. We also have ongoing capital projects that have been approved that are in place that also have matches with them. But as I said, we've never budgeted for those contributions in a direct manner. So city planner Andrea and myself are working together to create a future presentation in the very near future to council of just what that gap is of our ongoing capital projects, what the city's anticipated outlay will be. There is no major department within the city, be it fire, police, DPW, water and sewer, that has a capital reserve. So if we have some type of emergency expenditure where we need a very large piece of equipment or some other capital expenditure, there is no money set aside for that. So there's no savings that has been done over that time. And I understand it, given that just 4 years ago, 5 years ago, probably now, your fund balance was half of the recommended minimal. So I do see that the struggles are out there. Going back to summarize, what could we do with that $3.3 million? Some of the things that we need to cover is that since 2016, there's been minimal to no investments back into the capital of the city outside planned capital equipment purchases. There is money due to the capital fund to meet the matches that we've continued, that the council has signed up for on capital projects. I would encourage future capital reserves for some of those unknowns that may come up. And also just looking at 2023 to 2027, given the parameters, which I think are extremely conservative and probably fall short, this fund balance should be anticipated to be used to cover the shortfalls in what could be a revenue shortfall should the city fail to generate new revenue sources that are recurring year to year. So my recommendation would be for the city of Ogdensburg to continue with a fiscally conservative spending pattern until we have some ability to better predict your sales tax revenue and generate new revenue within the city.
Your chart here, 2019 to 2027 revenue versus expenditures. So this is based on the budget we recently adopted with 3 million in sales tax revenue projected.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and we did that, I believe, because we were preempting on 3% of the 4%. And we didn't know at the time that the county, which I think they did in January, was going to provide us with the other 0.5% in the last 4%.
That is correct.
So does it, I mean, I think those were conservative numbers from staff since we collected 4.7 million in 2021. I think 3 million was a very conservative number that we agreed to, but that essentially represents $1 million for every 0.5%. So is it logical, in a conservative way to project that there's another $1 million in revenue from the county's portion in the last 0.5%? Seems logical to me to.
Yes, no, that math is absolutely correct. The trick is meeting the $3 million at the end of March. I can just interject, which would be part of my upcoming presentation, that the revenue budgeted for the first quarter fell short of the budget 10%.
And there has to be recognition that we were amongst the only counties in the state during the pandemic to have an increase in sales tax. The sales tax increases have to be attributed by and large to the government money that's been influxed in the system, which is going to stop. If you look at our historic average of sales tax prior to the last couple of years with government influx of money, we're right around that 3.5 million mark. That's where our sales tax goes. So, Counselor, to say that my budget projection that you accepted was conservative, I would say I don't see it conservative at all. I see it likely safe in an environment when not only have we seen inflated sales tax now being further inflated, likely because of inflated prices, and our economy almost certainly going to a recession. To plan for greater than that, to have less, would just put us in a further unpredicted state. It would be better certainly to have at the end of the year $500,000 extra. We pull that ARPA money out, do something more proactive with it. But I think to continue to think that we're going to see an economy flourish when there are no economic indicators out there from the Federal Reserve or from the state comptroller's office that say we should count on a healthy economy is really sort of an absurd way to look at how we're going to project.
We will have the Canadian Bridge reopening, and that's a big source of sales tax revenue, I hope. But my point is that your chart here doesn't reflect that other 0.5% of revenue, which could be, as much as $1 million. Some people say even more than that. And does it reflect the council voted to do a revaluation of homes, so there should be an influx of revenue on an ongoing annual basis starting in 2024. And by my estimates, I guess you'd call it a modest 10% increase in values. I don't know what they're going to come up with. That is close to $500,000 in revenue. I don't think that's reflected in the chart here either.
I don't think it can be, and I think that you're implying an indirect politician's tax increase. When you don't raise the tax rate, but the assessments go up and you keep it the same, you're effectively increasing the taxes on people. So I don't. It's contradictory to what this council has done, which is let people keep more of their money to say when the assessments go up, we'll leave the tax rate alone and bring in more money. That's the politician's tax increase.
Well, I think it really depends on the number, but I think revaluations are being done to keep up with increased costs, because every community faces that, and that's why you do that. And it would be nice if a portion of that could go back for a tax reduction, but that'll depend on the number.
If we could lower the tax rate and not overburden our residents by higher property values, I think that would also allow property values to continue to rise.
I'm happy with what we've done, and I've been the biggest advocate for it. And yeah, I would like to see a portion of that used to reduce taxes, but it really depends on that reval and what it is and what our financial condition is. But certainly we're doing that, not to do a tax cut, but we're doing it to generate revenue to keep up with expenses.
The other thing about, higher property values, a lot of money that came in from outside here. Their property values downstate in other areas have increased and ours haven't. They come up here to see a bargain, they start buying a property. The people who have lived here their whole life. If we increase the tax for that whole assessment increase, it's gonna be a real hardship on a lot.
Yeah, we can't increase taxes. The purpose of the reassessment is to raise the property values
Yeah.
so that we can reduce taxes and get away from the constitutional tax limit. And to your point, to keep people who've lived here their whole lives and families from losing their property. And so that's why we're doing it. And, it makes sense. I mean, when the property values up there are so low, we can't use it to raise taxes. It's to get us away from that constitutional tax limit is what it's gonna do. Because I think that's part of the problem that keeps us at that constitutional tax limit is the fact that the property values are so low. Combine that with the fact that only, I believe this says 44% of the property is taxable. And that's why you've got that issue, that financial issue is coming close to the constitutional tax limit. I mean, the issues here, that there's no doubt that back in 2016, the city was in some financial trouble. And there's also no doubt, and it's being ignored, that we did a lot of things to pull us out of here, including getting a hold of the Financial Restructuring Board. And not only following the recommendations, we gave them most of those recommendations, and they offered to help us do a reset in the city, which we're doing.
Which ones did you follow?
Pardon?
Which ones did you follow?
Everyone.
You followed every one of them?
Yep.
You cut departments and.
And as a matter of fact, we're going beyond that with the police department. Yeah, we got a contract with the fire department to reduce by 4. Now, the Financial Restructuring Board, when you look at that, they want us to reduce down to 20. We also have the 2 in, 2 out rule. This thing was lengthy and very discussed to meet in the middle and go with 4. They gave us healthcare concessions. And those new contracts, as you know, saved this city almost $500,000 a year for the first 2 years, which completely paid for the raises. Well, I mean, the facts are the facts. If you want to present facts, present all the facts. The whole fleet project, we would have implemented more. I mean, obviously you guys picked up where we left off.
No, we came in, we took the restructuring board thing and we followed.
Excuse me, I'm talking.
You didn't do anything.
We didn't do anything.
No, you didn't.
The past is in the past. The way I look at it, we should just move on.
So we should not ignore the past, right? So why do we keep
Well, it's
bringing
gonna
it up?
repeat itself,
No, I
obviously.
know.
I mean, the fact of the matter is we were moving the city forward. We went from a $108,000 fund balance in 2016 or 17, and we worked with the departments to make a lot of changes. And by the time 2019 came around, we had $2.6 million fund balance, and we were doing well. Our bond rating went up with Moody's so that we can get bans now for capital projects. Angela's right. We should be reserving money for capital equipment and things like that.
Wow.
And we did a lot to get us right here where we are. You guys just took the thing and started running. And the biggest difference
Yeah, I mean,
is that we worked with departments in the city and the unions, and you guys just came in and say, nah, we're cutting and slashing.
okay, well, so we should sit back
It's
for
different
12 more
philosophy.
years and wait for nothing.
It's different philosophies. No, the fire department threw $2 million on the table last year, and it was rejected.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Your recap's a bit off.
Well, you know what they say about opinions.
The one thing I,
2018 year increased spending $1 million. This is 2019. This is July 2019. So you didn't have things worked out. This is July 2019.
She's
It
screaming.
was all in a report that was given to you last
The
April.
fact is, what we're dealing with now is that you have state retirements increasing faster than our revenue. You have health insurance increasing faster than our revenues. So we're gonna be in a problem. 2027, 2030, we're gonna be right back in that position. just aren't.
Numbers don't lie.
Hold,
If you maintain what we're doing, but if you don't maintain what we're doing and you keep going ahead and continuing the negotiations with the departments, the police department, the fire department, all these departments, I mean, yeah, you have to do that to move forward and you can't just stop. You know?
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think some of these resolutions tonight
I think
are right on
there's a
spot.
couple here I'm gonna be voting for and there's a couple I'm not gonna be voting for. Because I think they're nonsense, but the financial stuff, yeah, I'm gonna be voting for it. I mean, that healthcare consortium, why wouldn't I? We've been trying to do that for years.
so I looked through the budgets and I went back to 2016, 2020. So we're just gonna say, you have 11 less people in the fire department and 11 less people in the police department. If you look at those budgets, the 2022 budget is only $140,000 less in the police department and the fire department than it was in 2016. 11 less people, and the budget in 2022 is only $140,000 less. So that is how much those costs increased. They increased the cost of 11
I
people.
think there's a lot more variables there.
Wow. I mean, just.
You still
the
got to come up with
budgets are
money.
right there. I mean, it's $140,000 less than the 2016. 6 years, 11 people less. So, that the cost increased
We've
over 6 years.
paid
The
back
cost
a lot of
increased.
debt.
The
We have paid
expense of
back a lot of
11
debt.
people in each department.
I think
So-
there's a lot more variables there than just looking at a bottom line. So,
Yeah.
like debt,
Please share.
things like that.
Please share.
The best resolution on there, I thought, was convincing the state to, do something with all the St. Lawrence Psychiatric Center land and those buildings and the prison. And, I mean, that's easily 25% of the land mass of the city. And if that was all in private ownership, it'd be a different city. So we need to definitely pursue that. Yeah.
Yeah, we started that years ago and it took a long time to get where we are. It's my
Nowhere.
understanding, it's ready to rock and roll here.
So can
I
we,
think all the proclamations carry some.
can we just let Angela finish her report?
I think she was done.
Are y'all done?
I just have, I don't know if the city manager has anything to add. I just have the March Q1 financial operating results to review with you. Just to take a look at the budget report by department, you will see that we collected 90% of our anticipated revenue. A little bit behind where we were at this same point last year. And as I stated earlier, we have not met what I would consider a quarterly budget amount for sales tax. So that's kind of the contributing factor of the difference year over year. Looking at the expense line 1364, I just want to let you know that that is largely related to 212 Ford Street. We will be proposing budget amendments in June. Looking at 3410 fire protection, where we would expect all of these percentages remaining to be in a perfect financial world would be 75% of the budget remaining. The fire protection only has 48% of the budget remaining, but these financial statements include the purchase of the $950,000 truck.
That was grant money, correct?
It is, but the grant money, we accepted that until last year's budget, so we do have to do a budget modification for that. I'm not saying that's contributing to the deficit. We will be correcting that when we do the mid-year budget amendments.
Would you attribute overtime to that comp time?
For the fire department?
Yeah.
When I analyze that, the overtime is down, hazard pay is up. So
Does that include comp time that's reserved and is going to be paid off on December 1st? Because I know a lot of the guys have like 500 hours built up and things like that isn't really reflected here yet.
That
It
is
won't be reflected until it's paid. in
December, that is correct, yes.
So
So
but
there's-
that number, does that number include that? What's not being reflected here?
It does not, no. So the comp time that, well, let me rephrase that a little bit. Through December 31st, 2021, we recognize what we call compensated absences. That's money due to every employee that they have not yet cashed in on. So the growth of their compensated absences from January 1 to March 31st are not reflected in that number. It's just an annual number that we determine that with. Because it is paid out in December, it, sort of averages the same every year. We'll see what this year brings.
Yeah, it was a discussion item.
Is that the conversion of the 200 hours of overtime for the firefighters that turned in? Is that's what's turned into comp time?
So in other words, I think what Mr. Powers is getting at is we've known for years that they're allowed to have billed 200 hours of comp time and not go into the following year with that. So
Right.
Beyond that, what I'm saying is there's guys right now already that have over 500 hours that'll be paid. And so that's exactly what we're talking about, Mike. So,
But that won't be reflected until later in the
December.
fiscal year.
So right now we have 16 firefighters, correct? 17 in June or 17 now?
I'm sorry, 16, 17.
Yeah.
they didn't get hired back.
So just
Sorry, Jen.
humor me for a minute. So in a good economical fire department, a good economical fire department for Ogdensburg, hypothetically, you tell me if I'm wrong, would be 18 people working 12-hour shifts. And anything beyond that would be volunteers if it's necessary. And you'd have 4 guys on a shift.
It's an interesting scenario.
Three and a half
Whipped
three and a
across
half
the room
days
at me,
on,
but I
three
wouldn't
and a
have an
half
idea
days.
where you got your numbers from.
Huh?
It's an interesting scenario you've whipped across the room, but I wouldn't have an idea where you got that from.
I just wrote it down.
Yeah, I don't know. A 12-hour shift that you're saying covered half the day paid and half the day not paid?
No. I'm talking about the 18 people. If you have 4 men on a shift, or 4
Right.
people, I should say.
Right, times 4 shifts.
So if you had 18 people, you could fill the week with that and cover some of the vacation and overtime.
It's almost what we're doing now, and the answer is very, very little of it without overtime. We have 4 people on a shift right now, let's say. Our minimum staffing is 4. So we have 4 and 4. So whenever somebody is off, we have to use the invisible man overtime to fill the billet.
Yeah. Isn't some of the issue, I guess it's not the hours that are worked, like a 24-hour day on a Sunday, and
But you have to cover the calendar some way. 12-hour shifts, 24-hour shifts, 8-hour shifts. Right now we cover everything with paid personnel.
Is the hazard duty pay is ultimately, assuming high, do we have any kind of number of what that looks like? And I'm assuming it's based off the contractual language that there's only a certain amount of people on the shift.
Yeah, that's correct. I don't have it with me tonight. I sent it to all of you, I think Wednesday or Thursday of last week.
I mean, the contract's in place and the court's going to decide that for us. I'm just talking hypothetically that if you had 18 people, it covers the majority of the week, whether you're working 12s or 8s or whatever. But
it covers until someone can't come to work.
Yeah.
Scheduled leave, sick time, training time, et cetera.
okay, I thought there was like a flow.
And the comp time that Councilor Scamperly and Powers are alluding to is the firefighters' average work week works out to 42 hours instead of 40 hours. So they get an inherent bank of comp time that offsets, that makes up for that above the 40-hour work week instead of them being paid for that. What they can't carry over into the next year, we pay out. Typically, we make a projection in the fall so the council's prepared to transfer money if need be. Certainly, it will be it will be higher this year because of the inability to allow say more than one person off at any given time, whether it's vacation time, comp time, personal leave, training leave, whatever. Again, anytime someone's off, you're going to incur overtime, and we knew that going into this year. I mean, the budget reflected the amount of money. It reflected the overtime and has pay. Likely not high enough, depending on how the numbers work out at the end of the year, but we knew that going into about 4 positions less on the shift than we should have had. And even maintaining 5 positions on a shift, trying to keep 4 on duty still only allows you a gap of 1. So I mean, we're running a pretty lean ship, and that's why I've said to council, that's not, excuse me, it's not a sustainable model. We can't sustain what we're doing now. This year, we knew it was going to be a tough year. We were going to run it this way. We're remaining hopeful that this posture that we're in is enough to kick us over the threshold so that we get the SAFER grant and the federal government funds for additional positions for us, or those numbers we're talking about in deficit now, you can add $600,000 too if we have to pay the cost to add 4 more firefighters in the budget for next year. So I mean, it doesn't matter which way you draw the paper here. We've just got issues. And again, I think the mayor's depiction there was accurate. When you talk about the amount of the difference in the money, when you look at the difference in positions over the last couple of years, how little we've saved, it just shows the costs are increasing. Again, it's not about not wanting firefighters, not wanting police officers. It's about how do we now pay for this? Let's just make the assumption that we all agree. There is a number that we all agree we need. I presented that in my budget proposal to you. Here's what the optimal number of the fire and police department is. That was way higher than what we funded. I gave you a middle of the road number. We funded the absolute low end. I mean, I don't think there's any real disparity or there's any real dissension the way it might be portrayed some days about the number of staff we ought to have. This discussion is fundamentally about money. And you can say throw money to the wind, but where are we getting the money from? We robbed every Peter we had to pay Paul. It's all gone. The only one we have left now is we built this little nest egg to be able to have money to invest in the projects that council's been wanting to pursue, pay off some past debt and things that have been lingering out there. So that really isn't the answer either. There is a gap, and whether we argue if it's $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million, if we get the sales tax, if we don't get the sales tax, we're talking now about balancing, really with a needle head here. It's not like there's anything that's going to give us a gap. If this happens, we're going to be in smooth sailing. No matter what we do, no matter what ends up good, the likelihood of something bad offsetting that is there, and we're right in this danger zone that will put us back into, well, we're only off by 400,000 or 500,000, so let's just take that from the fund balance this year and get to next year. Again, as I read you tonight through those budget numbers, that's what we've been there before, and I see us going back at that again.
The 2017, 18, 19 budgets, they were growing. Retirements and health insurance were growing $550,000 a year. Revenue was not keeping up. So we have less employees now, and we brought that increase down for a while. But so we'll probably know at the end of the year are the increases now 250,000, 300,000. With not hiring them, just with what we have, staying where we're at. Where does anyone see our revenue growing by that?
There's no place. And all the things that we're doing that are proactive, all the programs that every city council for the last 10 probably has wanted to see are moving at least now at a pace where people can see the progress. There was plenty of progress 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago. It's just the stuff you couldn't see in these programs to get them where they're going. But understanding the pace of development progress is 5, 7, 10 years away before you start to see those revenue offsets. Your best opportunity is in fact working hard to attract businesses and attract more spending to the properties you have, the business vacant locations you have, and increasing the sales tax. That is our best opportunity to increase revenue. But it won't be to the tune of $1 million or $2 million additional a year. It's not going to turn that kind of money. And we'll battle soon to maintain that 8% in St. Lawrence County that we're splitting between us and the county. I mean, where is the distinction between, well, lowering property taxes but continuing to beat sales tax at 8%, especially in a year that's seen off the chart inflation. Yes, local government's going to see a little more money because people are paying a lot more money. So, I mean, all these things are, again, you're balancing this on the head of a pin somewhere. And I don't think anything is predictable enough to be able to say, other than what is absolutely predictable is for many, many years, we've been projecting to spend more than we're taking. We robbed all the places we could rob to make the budget balance.
So when we came in, we were under threat of losing $1.1 million of our sales tax to the town, right? They wanted that money, and they wanted that bad. And then hard fight, we got a 1-year extension. We would have already been in financial trouble had they not give us that extension. But there was a lot of pressure to give us an extension. Then they're going to take the last penny. Then we're going to take the last penny. And then now we're getting half of the last penny. But we don't have a home. It's still up. If we don't, the county can change your mind tomorrow and take it. I mean, let's not spend money that we're not sure if we're going to have. I mean, it's been a battle. I mean, I was right here the night that Sarah Purdy was going to give the county money to make a deal because she was afraid. That money has been at risk for some time, and it's still at risk right now.
I've given council many times the projections forward, backward, using this formula, that formula. I can certainly have Angela resend them all. $3.5 million is where I see us coming in, somewhere between $3 and $3.5 million. That is going to be a really good 2022, $3 million to $3.5 million, and that includes we got a quarter on the old formula. $3.5 million is where I see is coming in. In 2023, when the effects of this inflation and a recession likely hit this economy, 3 to 3.5 million will be generous to plan for in 2023. We won't have any business budgeting outside of 3.5 million. No business at all. I don't predict. I don't think we'll have the information that will tell us that. I think our numbers as we start planning the budget late summer, early fall, will have us right around there. So certainly to go plan outside of that, knowing now that the financial indicators are the sales tax numbers may well take a hit with the overall economy. I wanted to add something on the property tax to what Councilor Scamperly said. We also remembered the state put in place 5 or 6 years ago. We don't have the ability to ignore assessments anymore. That was another old politician's trick. We don't have that ability anymore. The state watches your property values. They watch your comparable sales. If you don't maintain yourself at 100%, they start dropping your equalization rate and you lose that percentage of state aid. So if you drop to 90, 80, 70, like some places do, because they're holding the line. And again, it's that North Country logic that makes no sense on the earth, which is fight to keep property values low in an effort to keep your taxes down instead of fighting your politicians to keep the tax rate down. And then when your house sells for $50,000 or $60,000 more than your assessment, people just think that's somehow fair. It's not going to work that way. So we have to maintain 100% assessment. So property values, when we say in Ogdensburg, were historically low. They were not artificially low. They were low. That was based on our sales. I was really surprised last year with the sales that we saw in 2020. I was surprised that the state didn't tell us you're going to slip. They didn't. And I'm hoping this year, because we've told them we're working through a citywide reassessment, that they'll leave us alone, because I do believe now our property values are low in comparison to what the comparable sales will show. So we may in fact get dinged this year for not raising our assessable value based on a lot of comparable sales that are going on. So unlike days have passed, it really isn't a discretionary decision for council to say, we're not going to do anything with assessments this year. You can do it, but the state will penalize you for it. You'll maintain 100%. So up until this year, they haven't penalized. So we've been at 100. So while we can say they're low compared to going to Watertown or someplace else, seeing the Plattsburgh somewhere, the state has agreed with the values though, and we've maintained 100% assessable value. That's not going to continue. There's been too many sales. So we're gonna do the whole city at once so that we don't ding one portion of the city with higher values, and we can't offset the tax rate to do that. So the citywide process is almost of no choice right now. We've got to do the citywide process, because there is going to be an uptick in price selling for sure.
When will that roll come out?
So the roll will take effect in the late summer, fall of 2023. So the first taxes impacted by that will be the 2023 school taxes. The first city taxes will be the 2024 county and city tax in 2024.
When will people get their first notice that this is what we're proposing?
This time next year.
This time next year?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, they already know what we're proposing.
No, what the values would be, what their proposed value would be.
And the budget should adjust accordingly, the tax rates.
Of course.
Because budgets stay the same or whatever your budget, normal budget is.
If we need to raise 14 million, we need to raise 14 million. But it's going to be incumbent upon this council. And this is, again, part of back to, you'll see the resolutions tonight where I believe we've got to get members of council deeply engaged with every other entity, including the school, because there's an entity right there at $26, $27, $28 a thousand. If they follow these assessments up and don't adjust their tax rate, so everything we're doing amounts to pennies when you look at what the school tax bills will be if they're not willing to offset based on that. The county certainly isn't going to. So people are going to pay more county tax. The county's not going to adjust their county tax rate just for the city of Ogdensburg. So when your property goes up, you're for sure paying more county taxes. The only question is going to be, is the city of Ogdensburg government and the Ogdensburg school district going to do the right thing and lower the tax rate to equal that?
In regards to home rule, I've been talking to Richie's office regularly, and it's her number one priority for this session. And I talked to Mark Walczyk, and he used his influence with the county to get that resolution adopted. So I'm sure it's a priority for him as well. There's not much time left. So if anybody wants to make some calls, emphasize how important it is to us, that'd be great. And you'll keep us posted on the sales tax as we get them, perhaps?
Yes, absolutely. We are still in the month of May collecting March. So March was our first month. There's about a 2-month lag between the collection time period. So March is what was obviously collected in March to when the state pays that out. It's not paid out in one full lump sum. There's a whole schedule that goes along with that. So we'll keep you abreast of as that money comes in.
When would you expect that the county would provide us with our first check?
For the half, Renee Cole and I have been in communication. We've had just our schedules haven't linked up, but my anticipation is quarterly. So March, April, May is the sales tax quarter that we are in. Taxpayers pay that in full June 20th. So you're looking at a state disbursement of that full quarter. Sometime late summer is when everything's paid out to the municipality. So the thing the state does is they can give you money, they can take you money, they can take money away based on adjustments, et cetera. So I don't know if it makes sense to get that money any more frequently than quarterly from the county, but we can certainly work that out.
And the state is quarterly also, or is that monthly?
No, the state taxpayers pay into the sales tax system depending on their volume. Some pay the first 22 days and then the last 10 days. Some pay quarterly, some pay monthly. It just depends on the size of your business.
How often do you get a check from the state for sales tax?
Approximately twice a month.
Twice a month.
So we received one just this week, May 5th. Prior to that, it was April 12th and April 6th. So the first 2 weeks of the month we received sales tax.
You could share that with us?
Sure.
Yeah, it would be nice if, I think the last time the city preempted and collected it on their own, I had just heard from a previous city manager that it was kind of up and down. They could never figure out, what the state was doing. So we might have that same situation. So certainly, if the county could do it on a monthly basis, it would help with our
Sure, the
cash
state
receipts.
is, sorry to interrupt, but the state is very clear what our disbursement is for. So they publish 2 publications that we're able to see very clearly exactly what it is we're getting paid for. So, but I can work it out with the county that we could do it on a more frequent basis, no problem. If they're willing, that's the other side. Yeah, so I'll work with the treasurer, Renee Cole, on that.
You have anything else?
I just do, we haven't talked about water sewer, just very quickly. In both the water sewer funds, you'll see a line that's unbudgeted, line 9901 in both of those. That's just a change. That's not an unbudgeted expense. My predecessors would always put this money into other expense items. Proper categorization, proper accounting calls for that to be on the 9901 line. So we'll be doing a budget transfer June to take care of that. But that basically represents, as we go out through the year, the amount of money that each respective fund is pushing over to the general fund. So it should be clearly stated on the financial statements as a transfer to other funds. The city has met its payments year to date on its bonds and its bans. Important to know for you guys. We also did finalize $19.6 million of long-term financing in the sewer fund. Your annual payment on that money alone is $653,000 a year for 30 years in change. It's a 0% loan, that portion. So that was just closed on last week. And we will be working to present sewer sooner rather than later for 2023 in light of that known information. So that is everything for March.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I just have, if I can, just a couple of questions here real quick. To double down on Councilor Risha's comments about the preemption and the potential that it's not in this this sales tax revenue suggestion. I guess my quick question is, and now that you're getting these in on a biweekly basis, I mean, please, by all means, share with us these numbers of sales tax revenues as they come in. And I'm curious to know if there's been an uptick at all, just simply based on the new legislation and law that's in place for online betting, or if that has any impact on any sales tax aspects throughout the county and state.
I don't believe, Counselor, that betting would impact sales tax.
Okay. And the additional revenue sources, just real quick, I see the New York State aid to incentives for municipalities and water and sewer funds. It amounts to about 3.67 million that were projected for revenue. If we were if we were to convert from a city to a town, how much of an impact would that have on that number?
I can't determine that standing here right now for
Okay.
you, but you're talking about the AIM money because that's only a budget item of short of 1.8 million.
Right. But I was talking about the money received from the New York State Consolidated Local Streets and Highways CHIPS and other state funded programs.
Okay. I'm unable to determine that for you sitting here.
I was just curious if there was a formula or an algorithm of any kind that relates to a city getting a certain amount of state funding, whether a town or village would get it. So I was just curious.
Sure, I can research that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do not have any proclamations this evening, and we do not have any public hearings tonight. So at this time, when attending would like to address council, please come down to the podium for about 5 minutes.
My name is Francine Griffin. I'm not a resident of Ogdensburg, but I wanted to publicly thank Mayor Skelly for standing up against the St. Lawrence Board of Legislators and the county administrator in regards to the CPS wrongdoing in this county. Mayor Skelly is the only elected official in this county, in this state, who accused them of combined gross failure in their oversight of the Department of Social Services. He stated there needs to be more accountability, and they are the people leading the county, and they failed. Mayor Skelly was 100% correct. Some legislators' replies were, the mayor is a fool, They don't feel the need to comment on his ramblings, not worthy of comment, and disgusted with the mayor's comments about the county administrator. Victims of CPS's wrongdoing have been fighting for justice for almost a year now, and our legislators, county administrator, and attorney have proven the mayor's words to be true. When confronted with the discovery of the truth and aforementioned comments or their replies, they never intended to investigate, and I use the term loosely, or get to any of the truth in any of the cases of wrongdoing. Some stating there are legitimate cases, but from the very beginning, they have denied any wrongdoing. One legislator urged the others and the county administrator to provide defense for DSS employees. To put it very simply and bluntly, their attempts to cover up their corruption in this matter has been blatantly obvious and deceptive. Case in point, the county administrator has stated many different stories on what the Bonadillo Group was hired to do. Her story has changed so many times that I have to wonder if she thinks everyone is too stupid to notice. I did find out that the Bonadillo Group was hired and trained by Office of Children and Family Services. Office of Children and Family Services deny wrongdoing of caseworkers that they're supposed to oversee. The county hired a law firm, which was kept quiet until recently, to investigate. Again, I use the word loosely. This law firm engaged Bonadillo to come into CPS. Both firms have interviewed and looked into CPS records. Then they wished to interview complainants. It didn't happen. Bonadillo works and partners with Office of Children and Family Services. They are brought in to fix CPS issues. If this sounds like a collaborative effort of all agencies involved, including those in Canton, I believe that's exactly what has and is going on. County administrators stating at an operations meeting that CPS was their top priority. The county attorney, when asked by a legislator if legal services would be provided to complainants if they couldn't afford an attorney, which, by the way, I believe no one asked, stated, why would we provide them with services when there may be a potential of lawsuits? Bingo. Their objective to bringing in the law firm that they claim was to investigate wrongdoing was an attempt to get rid of complainants, I believe. They were hired to represent the county. The way the county has and is handling the CPS issue should be criminal. Button and Doyle did an article on getting it straight in the CPS issue. If that was getting it straight, then my perception of the word crooked is a little off, but I don't think it is. Protecting those who have been wronged, protecting those who have wronged and committed crimes within the system over the innocent is beyond reprehensible. It's ludicrous for them to continually deny any wrong when this issue is a nationwide issue and a well-known problem. Yet, yet those in Canton continue to cover up and deny. No oversight is a huge problem. The confidentiality of family court and CPS allows them to operate under a shroud of secrecy that has created a culture of unaccountability, abuse of power, and widespread human rights violations. Confidentiality protects the system and it's hurting children. Social workers are now admonished for gross criminal misconduct. I thank you, Mr. Skelly, for being the only one in this county, in this state, for standing up against those in Canton. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Hi, everyone. How we doing?
Good.
Hi.
I'm here tonight, unfortunately, to talk about something that happened to me and something I'd found out about. A little over 1 year ago, I was arrested by the Ogdensburg City Police Department for trespassing. I was found not guilty in Ogdensburg City Court. Sometime leading up to my trial, and it was mentioned in my trial, the city attorney was somehow utilized or involved in my case. I've worked very hard to try to find out how that happened or how that came to be. I've been ignored for quite a long time by this man right here, unfortunately. I'm being ignored by the prosecution office, by several other people too. So I'm here to ask you, Steve, how come the city attorney was utilizing my case for Jonathan Lovely?
You can't direct.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, if I hadn't been ignored, and I had asked Kathy here and she couldn't answer me. So what else is a man to do to get an answer for his question, But now maybe some things can be looked into, and I would like an example of when this has ever been done. And I'd also like an example when someone was arrested and handcuffed at their house for a violation charge, not criminal, for violation. That's all I have left to say, and thank you.
Anyone else? And this brings us to correspondence. We have one.
I have a check. You usually have me check. So
Okay.
one moment, Mayor. Give me just 1 second. I do not see any hands raised.
Next, we have our consent agenda that the claims is enumerated. General fund warrant number 08-2022, the amount of $1,119,528.26. In library warrant number 08-2022, the amount of $0. In capital fund warrant number 08-2022, the amount of $929,157.52. In community development fund warrant number 08-2022, the amount of $120.98. The community renewal fund warrant number 08-2022, the amount of $0. As audited, be the same hereby are orders paid. I so move.
I'll second it.
Got a question. We've been talking about this through an email exchange, but I noticed that there's the $78,000 check for the rescue squad. It says payment date 4/14. Have they been paid?
They've not.
Good. I know they want to come here and present. Maybe we'll talk about that under items for discussion. But I'm certainly going to approve it.
We can talk about whenever. I've asked them for financial documents, the short route, which is them provide them to me, they refuse. We're requesting them through the long route, which is through the AG's office, so I can assure the council of the organization's financial stability. Finances are really the least of our concern. Organization that saves lives, so it's important to make sure that they're able to balance their books and pay their debt. It's certainly not an organization that's been financially clean and easy for the last several years, so we need to make sure that before we pass over the second part of $156,000. They provided the information last year when asked without any question. I don't know what the absence is this year. Maybe instead of inciting them to not provide the information, Councilor Scamper, you could just ask them to turn it over as they've always done. If council orders me to give the check before there's a proper financial review to make sure they're viable, I'll turn over. As of right now, I'm doing what any responsible city manager would do in making sure the viability of the organization, the money's being spent in the manner which it was asked for to be spent in.
So just to be clarify, I haven't incited them not to give you money. They're welcome to give you the money or not, or excuse me, their financial records. As a matter of fact, Ken Gardner told me last time he brought them with him to the council meeting. So.
It would be hard for me to review them at the council meeting.
Yeah, usually they give us a report on what they're doing, and they hand us the financial stuff, and then we do follow up later. So if there's no stipulations on the $78,000 that we budgeted, I just assume they get paid and have them give their annual report. So
I'd like to see the financial report, because like you say, then we know that they're, they're in good financial condition to take care of people. And if we find that they're not, well, then we would look at helping them more often. But yeah, I think
It's a major city service. It's a major city service that we contract. We shouldn't lose sight of that. They're not a charitable organization that we give money to just because we're trying to help them along. It's a major city service that we don't do organically. We contract the service for. We have to make sure that the service and the organization that does that is viable. Wouldn't be any different with any other contractor organization that we hire. In fact, we'd have other contractors bond to make sure that they could follow through with the contract. So, I mean, it's really a very simple process. And Councilor Scampley, when you tell them things and post things like that the city manager is trying to destroy them or tear them apart, it sort of does incite them to not do what I ask.
Well, with that being said, I'm not going to argue either side of this, but I mean, they provide a vital service to our community. I don't have a problem looking at their financials, based off the history, the long history that they've had here with the city of Ogdensburg and providing this vital service to our citizens and to the people in the surrounding towns and villages. If we appropriated it in the budget, we've got it here on the consent agenda. From what I'm assuming is a check that's been sent out to be paid, and recognizing that it's in the budget, 78,000 at this quarter and or at this time, and then any future. I mean, what's the difference really? I mean, we're going to we see the need. We have the need. We're staging in certain facets. With any additional monies that we can give them, can only enhance the product that they have at this point, whether it's fledgling or not, which I don't know if it is, and I don't know if it isn't. But I don't see why not getting that out and having that information readily available through the AG's office that we'll ultimately get. We can adjust as we go. But in my opinion, it's a vital service, and I think we should be giving them the check and then meeting after the fact.
I think we all realize it's vital. I think Steve, most of all, realizes that it's vital. Steve reached out to them. This council, this government had not given them money for a decade. And Steve reached out to him and asked him, what could we do to help? Show me what you need. And they brought this forward. They needed stimulants. They paid $78,000 as a first payment. Now the second payment's there. You know what? They're only getting it because that man reached out to them. I'm certain he wants them to have it. He just wants to know. And so you check the financial report and say it's deficient. And then now we know. Now we are aware. And if we need to help them, we'll help them. This is irresponsible on their part. This is a simple request. They've gotten over $150,000 when they get this check that they hadn't had from other administrations. He's the one reached out. Just give the report to the man, let him review it, and let's see where they are. And we'll give them the money, and maybe we help them more if they need. These are our people. And if they're not financially sound to provide this care, Steve's absolutely right. We need to be aware if they're sound financially and they can do their job. And if they're not, then we need to help them. Give the financial report and let's get this done.
So you're not planning on holding the money?
No.
Of course, I'm the one that got him the money. Do you remember arguing with me and not giving the money?
No.
You sort of were against it. Do you remember? You sort of were. Yeah, you were, actually. You were sort of against giving the money. That's why I say it's a little bit of irony here. I'm the one that got him the money, but now all of a sudden we're acting like it's different. I'll just remind council, we poured $500,000 a year into the library, and look what that got us. That's what happens when we don't review organizations that we're pouring significant amounts of money
But we're
into.
not doing that anymore. So,
Well, no, we're not doing it because this council and I stopped it, Councilor Powers.
Well,
So again, a little support maybe to the rescue squad.
good for you. But we're going forward here, right? We're going forward here. We're talking about the rescue
That was one of those recommendations on the FRB.
And it was also a recommendation of the previous council where they did make significant cuts to both the Remington and the library. It's all in the budgets.
We actually reduced the Remington Library from over $1 million down to 380,
Which is
by the time 2020.
we,
We were working on it still.
vote on the
just good we're acknowledging that now.
And slowly building a general fund.
And all I want,
not decimating services across the city of Ogdensburg.
Okay, stand up
All I
and
want to
cheer.
say is,
Thank you. I'll
I've
take a
said
bow.
There you go.
Said all along that if the library would be open a couple evenings in the Saturday, they're open 37 and a half hours. Now, they're not getting money from us, but they're getting money from our residents. Now, through a referendum, it's still a lot of money. And all I say is, you have a workforce of 8 people. If you could divide that workforce up and be open a couple evenings in a Saturday, so that residents could go after work, children could go when they're not in school, I would support it. And they say, my understanding is that they say they're union and they don't want to work those. I think that's unfortunate because I think it does provide a lot for our community and it needs to provide more by being open. Anyway, Kathy, could you call the roll, please?
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
approved.
We have one appointment tonight. And I'll make a motion to appoint James LeFave as alternate on the planning board, term to begin May 9th, 2022, and end December 31st, 2023. I so move.
I'll second.
Kathy, would you
Good
please
guy.
call the roll?
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
approved.
That brings us to items for council action. Our first item of business will be read by City Manager Stephen Zelli.
A resolution calling for the New York State Office of General Services to develop a plan of action for the sale of all property encompassed on the former Ogdensburg Correctional Facility and the unused portions of the St. Lawrence Psychiatric Center.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Actually, should have been John. Should have allowed John to move that. He's
So
been a champion.
of course, I support moving the property and doing this. The only part of this I disagree with is making one person the designated point of contact. I think John's capable. I think we're all capable. I think that just like with all these resolutions that designate an official appointee, I think that's the wrong part. And John, if you want to go ahead and talk to these people and take the lead, whatever, I fully support it, but I don't want that in this resolution. I simply want the resolution. I want to get the land for the city and things like that. So I'm gonna.
I had an amendment if I could. So, no, I like the concept and I would propose adding a second whereas after the first whereas. Whereas this abandoned state land encompasses nearly 25% of the land mass. Are you able to get this all right? Yeah.
I'll get it from the recording. Thank you, sir. You're fine.
Okay. 25% of the land mass in the city of Ogdensburg and remains tax exempt and a burden on this community. And hold on a second here. Another whereas that the city requests the Office of Mental Health to spend $20,000 to conduct an inventory and analysis of abandoned historic buildings to determine which buildings are beyond repair and which buildings can be placed on the state and national register of historic places, because that's what it's basically asking OMH to provide the $20,000. And the first step in their process of doing anything with all those old buildings is that inventory and analysis. And that's what the state would use to decide which ones to tear down and which ones could go on the national register and be saved. And I'm fine with taking out the second, be it further resolved. That's fine by me. I mean, I'll do that. I've talked to Steve and am working on it, and anybody can. That's fine.
Well,
So that would be my amendment.
it's not stopping by working on it, but it just, gives, one person, as a formal contact and, and probably, hopefully these resolutions, if approved, they'll give some counselors, this is my project and I'm gonna put the effort for it. When it comes through.
I'll second those amendments, John. Thank you.
If I can, John, you might want to include the Office of General Services as well, because ultimately they're going to have the final say over OMH and docs.
Okay. The city requests the Office of Mental Health and Office of General Services. That's fine.
Well, wait a minute. I apologize.
The resolution already calls.
No, that's good. No, that's good. No, that's good.
So Mayor, the reason I'm asking for the designated political point of contact is, and I want to be clear to all of council, all of these issues go nowhere at the staff level without the political establishment working together. So Patty Ritchie's staff and I only work so well as members of this council are working with her or the assemblyman's office, et cetera. So on this particular topic, Councilor Reese has certainly been engaged in there. I think that it's important for the political establishment to see that he is empowered and speaking, if you will, on behalf of the political establishment. Again, fine with me if it doesn't happen, but I say this again. The reason this hasn't moved, and this has been out here for years, this has been going around since about 2015, is because nobody on the political side of the house has worked this. The staff won't get it done without the political side getting the to get it done. It won't happen. None of the things that we're working on at the state level will happen. So the political side has to be there. They've got to be engaged. When Senator Ritchie or Assemblyman Walzik are on the phone for a meeting, there has to be an elected official from this city on the phone as well. It's just that simple. So I'm just, again, Councilor Reese has worked on this one. I'm certain that he will, but we've got many other topics that we don't have somebody working on, and it needs to occur if we're going to move them forward.
Kathy, will this
I'm not, sorry, John.
will this automatically get sent to the governor and our state representatives?
I can if council wishes, absolutely.
Does it need to be in the resolution?
You can include it if you wish, but I'll certainly follow directive.
Oh, okay, let's vote on it first. We'll deal with that later.
Well, I just want to comment real quick on city manager's comment there. Patty Ritchie tried to throw that land up on the property back in 2010, I believe. It was one of those years, 9, 10, or 11. And she was proposing to get that property done. And she had actually had the deal with OGS to be able to get that sale for some portions of that property for a basement price, if I remember correctly. I don't have the exact total, but it had to come with some taxes and some of the other, or not taxes, but some of the remediation and abatement that was necessary. And unfortunately, none of that ever took off from her perspective when she was moving that. And she was in the majority at the time. And I have had many a conversation with OGS and the commissioner of OGS, along with members of docs. And it's concerning to me about some of the things that I found out as of late that I'll leave later until I can secure more information on it. But moving forward, I have no doubt that Councilor Reese or anybody up there can lobby on behalf of the city of Ogdensburg in any way, shape, or form. But I'm not in tune with having to do it because I've had multiple conversations from sales tax to citywide properties to many aspects, the closure of Ogdensburg Correctional, and potential issues coming potentially with the psych center. So, I don't think it should be relegated to one individual moving forward, getting that done. I mean, we've had a lot of relationships get frayed along the way here, and that's been problematic since Jump Street, and that's still prevalent to this day.
And Mayor, I would disagree, and I'd ask Councilor Powers to please show proof of any discussions he had on any of the topic that he's had on behalf of the city to try to move them forward, because I think he just, quite frankly, is not. I think he's just saying that. I don't think there's any evidence to the contrary. I'd certainly like to see the information and how he's been working with staff to do that, because he hasn't been present for any of the calls I've been on. So I'd like to see where that's been. And it's exactly the point I'm saying.
You denied me access to the commissioners that I asked for back on October 21st, 25th, and then we had a lengthy Facebook go back and forth related to that with your mayor there. So, you know, that's a bunch of BS, and you chose to have the mayor respond to that email. Everybody up there is privy to it, and that's where it lies. And regardless, I could care less what you believe. I know what I'm doing, and that's one of the reasons why I am where I am right now, because we're in the heart of a legislative session.
It sounds like it's been decades of talk. Like it's time for some action on these issues. So you want to vote on your amendment?
Yes.
Kathy, would you take a roll?
So this is a roll call to amend.
But are we also taking him out of the resolution?
That was part of
As far as-
Councilor
'cause it doesn't
Reese's
say
motion,
he's just
correct?
The sole guy.
No, he's not. So
It says that Councilor John Reese, who is designated the political point of contact, him will work closely with the city manager to establish a working group with the city, county, and state representatives in advance. That means everybody and anybody, but he's been working this for 2 years like a dog, nonstop, and it hasn't been anybody else's. It didn't come out of anybody else's mouth except his. And I've heard it and heard it and heard it. And if he's not going to forefront it, I'm not going to vote for it.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm still waiting for Steve to set a meeting up that I asked for like a month ago. So
There needs
I'm
to,
still active.
there needs to be a unified message. If in fact Councilor Powers is out there talking about it without coordination with the staff, it's proving my point exactly. There needs to be a political point of contact so the message is getting channeled. The message from this council as a body, not individual opinions, is being transmitted to our elected officials. That has been part of the problem. You can look at 100 reasons why it's still sitting there. The fact remains it's still sitting there, not on our tax rolls. And the plan that we're using is not really an efficient plan. The city of Ogdensburg taking over abandoned properties, potentially vacant buildings, contaminated, demolition costs, et cetera, because the state of New York isn't working on their problem. That's not really a solution. That's us taking over property that we don't have any funds for. That plan is not really a plan from my perspective that we could execute today.
We didn't accept it before.
I agree.
When the state threw it at us.
Yep.
And
The worst thing you can do is fight amongst yourselves when you're trying to fight the state. So
Exactly right.
because we didn't want to take over more blighted property.
Agree.
And so
Bad plan.
the plan was to keep it going through
Move the
petty
amendment.
and get some cleanup money as well. And trying to get we were so close so many times. Trying to get the final marker is the problem. And it's always lied, I felt, with the state. You know, those entities at the state, OMH and whoever else, not us.
It may perhaps be simpler now because one state agency, docs, will likely not be a significant player in it any longer, may not be required to sign off. I don't know.
I don't think they were the problem. It seemed like OMH to me was always the problem.
No, docs has been the problem as of recent.
why don't you keep your name in?
I think we can vote.
Why don't you pull the amendment? Just keep your name in. That's all.
Because I really didn't think it was necessary. I really don't.
I'd like you to keep going, and I'd like to say kudos to you for picking it up and running.
That's all I've heard for 2 years.
But I just don't think it's necessary to have this in. I agree with you. You know, thank you.
Kathy, would you follow that? Roll on the amendment?
So Councilor Reese is not willing, you don't wish to amend your motion to amend. So we're removing the last be it
Yes,
further resolved.
yes.
And then
Understood.
adding the two whereas.
Yes, and adding the two whereas, yes.
And it should pass unanimously, so we send a real positive message to the state. of
I
New York.
agree.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
No.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
No.
Counselor Kennedy. Yes. Approved. Mayor, now we need to vote as amended, please. Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
No.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
No.
Counselor Kennedy. Yes. Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Approved.
Thank you, John.
And I will introduce our next item. A resolution requesting the governor of the state of New York to permanently designate one seat on the Augsburg Bridge and Port Authority Board of Directors for a member of City Council. I'll move that.
I'll second it. I think that's a great idea. You know, well, I work for the authority, but the authority plays an important role in the community. And, you know, they own a lot of land, which they shouldn't. And we need to talk about that sometime too, because it's all off the tax rolls and it's part of the city's problems. And when you have people from other communities on the board, that's, you know, I don't think they hear our concerns or are aware of our concerns. So I think it's a good idea. I'll vote for it.
I support it.
What does the governor's office have to say?
They appoint people.
No, I mean, what do they have to say about this resolution?
We won't know till they get.
What's the Bridge and Port Authority have to say?
We don't know till they get.
So there's one part I don't like in this resolution. The fact that it says this practice results in nominations and board members that do not reflect the aspirations of the citizens of the city of Augsburg and St. Lawrence County. And so where's the proof that they don't reflect those aspirations?
Well,
to me, it's insulting. You're asking the governor to accept this, and then we're going to insult you. So I'd like that whereas removed as part of our conversation, and then we'll talk about whether or not we're going to actually.
I think it doesn't. I don't think our residents wanted our waterfront to have spoils from dredging with heavy metals on it. There's a lot of things we have to agree on.
And there's a lot of things we do agree on.
Right.
You
So
know,
we'll be on the board and we can communicate that.
you know, the fact that we got the airport, we worked together to get that and other things. I just think that's kind of an insulting whereas. I'd like to see that removed. Everything else, I mean, why not? But we don't have to slap people in the face, especially when we're asking for something. You know?
I don't think it's slapping in the face. I mean, I saw a lot of slapping the governor in the face down there at the library. That was slapping. That was uncalled.
I mean,
What if we just tweaked it? I didn't catch that. But what if we just tweaked it and made it a positive by saying this concept
Could improve and enhance the nominations. You know what I mean?
and better reflect
And better reflect,
The
you know,
aspirations of the city of
the citizens of Ogdensburg.
something like that. That
Well,
would work.
it's the same idea, it's just in a different way.
Instead of putting it as a negative, you're saying this could improve,
Yes.
right? Yes, absolutely.
I think the fourth whereas kind of covers it, doesn't it? I mean, it'd be most beneficial to the city of Ogdensburg for a member of council to be appointed to the OPBA Bridge Board of Directors. I tend to agree, I guess, with Dan. And as I look at it now, you know, when you go to them for an ask, and it kind of comes across to, I guess it all depends on how you read it, but I mean, John, I mean, typically she appoints, right, for all authorities. And I don't know that much about how she does her appointments. I know it's very political, obviously, but all that aside, I'm not, I don't.
Well, she won't be able to do it. She won't be able to do it even if we were on her radar and she wanted to, because it would have to be a bill to amend their enabling legislation. And this would be in there. It would be specified. That's the only way it can be accomplished.
I see.
Yeah, so
What if we were to just strike the second whereas? I mean, we're covering it. I mean, I support the concept and the idea.
Fine with me, unless Mike, you'd rather reword it the way we did it.
I'm good with you. You want to,
I say, well, just, we can strike the second paragraph and then, because it's in the, it's beneficial for the city.
How would we, like, term dates, things like that, would it run the, if appointed individual run the entire term of their council seat? Is that how, or would it be a yearly appointment? I'm just curious how long.
That would be in the language in the bill. It would say that, the mayor's, it's the mayor's appointment and whatever the lawyers figure out in terms of how long it is. And
That's what we work out later.
I think it would fall right solely on her, wouldn't it?
So I didn't know if she would, if like the governor would direct the terms, or if that would be something that would come. I don't know how that works, so I'm genuinely curious.
Their terms are specified and
How long is the traditional term on the board?
I should know that, but I guess.
I figured you'd be the person to ask.
But I think it was like
in this
3 years.
case,
3 years.
in
and
this
then they
case,
just
it would
keep
be,
serving
end up
and they
being
get
two,
renominated.
right? Because it would go with our electoral process. It would probably end up being every 2 years in terms of the city, the mayor.
That would make sense. And if
That was
someone,
that's kind of where I was.
As a maximum.
if someone leaves, there'd be a vacancy and there'd be another appointment.
the governor will figure it out. So we're doing it.
So we're striking the second whereas and going forward as that amended.
We'd have to vote on that.
So we're going to vote on the amendment.
A whereas in there?
Whereas this concept, you finished it, go ahead.
Oh, you're going to call me back on it? I think I used the word enhances.
I have a Counselor Kennedy, if you'd like me to read it.
Yes, please, 'cause I forgot what I said.
Whereas this concept could improve and enhance the nominations and better reflect the aspirations of the citizens of the city of Ogdensburg and St. Lawrence County, which this public benefit corporation was created to serve. May I ask who's making the motion?
So the first part, Kathy,
Yes, sir.
where you say could better reflect the nominations. I don't like that because the governor's still making nominations other than this one. And so, but I did like the part that you had about could improve and better reflect the aspirations of the city of Ogdensburg.
So you want to remove, you want to remove the nominations?
Yeah, something to that whole.
Could improve and enhance and better reflect.
Boom. The aspirations of the city of Ogdensburg.
Understood.
Yep.
Could
You
improve
guys
it.
good with that?
Yeah, that's fine by me.
Is it your motion to amend, Counselor Reish?
I guess so.
I'll second it.
We have a roll.
This would be to amend. Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reish,
Yes.
approved. And now as amended, Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reish,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by Deputy Mayor Stephen Duffy.
A resolution to appoint John Reese, designated the city council liaison to the office of Senator Charles Schumer. So move.
I just have a hard time with these. I mean, I understand the concept and I understand, I guess, what, I don't think it's a good practice. It's, they could get the impression, or one of these people could say, well, you're not the appointed person to be talking to me. And, or we would feel like, if you're the appointed person, then that makes me uncomfortable to talk to them when you're the one that's appointed. So I just don't think it's a good government practice. So I can't vote for these. I like the concept, but it's just, I don't think it would work.
Wrong.
I-
Doesn't make it look
Sure.
like the councilors out there doing things. without authority. And it gives that person, they take this role, they're obligated to come back, consult with all council and with staff and tell them what they found out. Because now we don't have any continuity in these issues.
Plus, we've been sitting up here for months, and the manager constantly asks to contact these people. Some of these people, I'm just as guilty as anyone sitting up here. The only one that's doing it is John. For the most part, on a continuous basis, he's on the phone all the time.
I agree with John. I think that to do that's wrong. I think you're going from potentially 8 people down to 1 as the designated person. I don't like it, whether it's a public official at the state, federal level, school board even. I'm going to vote against all these resolutions. I think if we have a solid plan by the city, what we want, any one of us should be able to reach out and grab that baby by the horns. And it usually rolls around the issue that somebody grabs, not so much being the designated person with this or that particular entity. And that's my thoughts. I got to vote no on these.
My time, I found that nobody participated. This was a way of getting involvement and getting, a person in a key spot to work on it and bring information back to all of us. And then we all work on it.
So I've asked for the plan per issue. Throw them at us. We'll start picking and we'll start getting our politicians and show me the specifics that you want. And I'll go for it. She'll go for it. Everybody will go for it.
Well, the first thing that everybody ought to do is call or write Schumer and Gillibrand's office on the SAFER grant. I think we passed a resolution in that regard. But I mean, that's an important one.
I think we need
Okay. I just want to follow Councilor Reese's concept here. Well, the plan's noble and it has merit without question, but relegating it to one and no disrespect to John or anybody up there, regardless of who you're designated to talk to. A lot of times you're not actually going to, there's just room for potential confusion and log jamming. And what I mean by that is maybe talking to different people in their offices and certain aspects, whether it be infrastructure or grant monies or whatever the case may be. You'd be talking to different individuals and moving forward, that can cause potential log jamming going down the road. As we all agree that we're all willing to step up and do it, and going forward, I think having these conversations continually as we're moving forward so that we're all on the same page is vital, because you're not going to be speaking with the actual center. You're going to be speaking to a lot of their policy people, and they're the ones that are really getting a lot of it done. And that's just my 2 cents.
Is it possible to make a motion to table these items so we don't have to debate each one individually? I mean, it seems like people have their mind made up.
Vote on all 5 of them together, 6.
That's what I say too, Bill. It should just be wrapped up into one.
3-8, just vote on it.
So I'd make a motion to table Bill 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, and 44. That's acceptable.
Table indefinitely.
Well, someone will have to bring it back up, but once it's tabled, I think people that vote in favor of tabling are the only ones that can bring it up, or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know.
I mean, I'm fine with that.
I'll second it.
And, this gives people on the council some responsibility. When it came to sales tax, I only had Steve ever participate, it was our second biggest revenue, and everybody, and you went to 1. I never saw you again. This would give people some incentive.
I made a lot of phone calls.
Mayor, I just hear,
You never shared any.
I hear everybody, all for one, and the plan now is good, but exactly right. Just jotting down quickly, property tax, sales tax, home rule, and safer, all last year. Did not have strong support consistently from members of council. We didn't have it. Councilor Reese, hands down, making phone calls all the time. These issues are political, and you will talk to the designated representative. That's part of your job and their job, to talk to them. The staffs can talk all day long, so I just, again, this is an effort to do nothing other than get us focused, that a big part of what we do here is building a political machine to be able to do this, whether it's the county level, the state level, the federal level. If we don't have the politicians communicating with the politicians, we can't be successful. And the message has to be consistent. So when it's a 4-3 vote and 3 members of this council don't like it, they have to support it then. Otherwise, you cause the rift we got in the sales tax last year. So that becomes the issue here, is what we're speaking to the representative that we want. We did? I don't recall us all supporting it. No, I don't think we did. That's why we're going for half.
Support it. So.
The motion.
But yeah, I think
Seconded.
it's
Been
issue-based.
seconded.
And as long as we have a clear plan, you know, specifically what we want, whatever issue comes up, we all have at it. And that's the way we've always done business.
Great.
It hasn't worked. Okay.
Mayor.
So we are gonna take.
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you have a motion and a second to table, so we'll need to do one roll call.
Which one is Kathy?
It would be to table bill number 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, and 44. It was made by Counselor Reese and seconded by Counselor Powers. So we would just need a roll call to vote to table those bills.
Kathy, would you call the roll on that?
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
No.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
No.
tabled.
Makes things move forward. So we're on 9. Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Stephen Jelly.
A resolution instructing the city manager to present a formal plan no later than October 1st, 2022 to begin transitioning the Ogdensburg Fire Department to a combination career/volunteer organization beginning in 2023.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
No.
Counselor Powers,
No.
Counselor Reese,
I am in favor of, bringing in different supplemental assistance and as a way to reduce costs, because I mean, the city continues to get smaller and smaller. We have reduced, we were at 27. I think we should be somewhere between 18, 19, something like that. I just don't think it's a good time to pass this right now. I'm interested to see what the Court of Appeals decision is. And I'm also interested in, under the present contract, so that it specifies 5 people on a shift.
Mayor, point of order. Are we voting, or is a discussion period open?
I'm explaining my vote. Thank you very much.
Mayor, point of order. Are you open for discussion? Is the whole floor open for discussion?
So, I'd like to verify whether or not the shift positions can be filled by volunteers under the present contract with the IAFF. That's my concern. So I vote no.
Yeah.
Mayor, could we have discussion then? Could we have discussion if the discussion was open?
I thought the discussion's over.
Yeah, we're voting.
So again, councilors voting no for a study. voting no for an analysis to potentially save the city money. Taking a
That's
pass
right.
once again, taking
We
a
all
pass
read
once
it. We all
again
read the
on a
resolution.
potential way to save money. Taking a pass once again on potential to save the city money. Relegating ourselves only to raising taxes, cutting more positions in 2023, or taking fund balance. That's what we're relegating to. Councilor Reese, the Court of Appeals potential to take the current case on has no bearing on something like this, none whatsoever. Absolutely none.
Well,
The Court of Appeals is going to look at, if they look at it all, whether we go to arbitration on the current complaints that are there, not whether we form a combination fire department or not. It has no bearing on the situation.
well, it will decide whether or not it's a safety clause, and it makes a difference whether there's 4 or 5. If there's 5, there's certainly more of a demand. If there's 4, there's less of a demand. And we have a contract that goes through 2026, and it says that their representatives fill those slots. So that's another concern I have, and I would like a legal opinion to say whether or not volunteers can fill those slots. If they can't,
If we study it, we will have those opinions. If we don't study it, there's no staff
we can ask
authorization.
our
to do this.
attorney for that. We don't need to do a study.
Even if you can't fill the slots, more firemen is safer.
I agree. I just want to see, I want those 2 answers, and then my mind is open. Like I started out saying, I'm in favor of enhancing it, but it depends on those 2 things.
But this is.
And we'll know that probably this month.
This is to hire a consultant to do a survey to see what would be beneficial one way or the other, whether or not it's feasible or not feasible, right?
And I don't know if we'd hire a consultant or not. I don't know that we don't have the expertise here to line up the pros and cons of what it is. But again, kicking it down the road for a potential decision, we won't have a decision if the Court of Appeals accepts our case. There will just be a decision to go to arbitration or not. That likely will be the end of the year, first of next year. Again, we're just kicking the can down the road.
Okay, so. Well, I don't understand why anyone would oppose more, the possibility of having more firefighters. It's, if you really believe in safety, you'd want a study.
Well, we should have really had a discussion before we started voting.
We should have.
I don't think anybody's opposed to that concept, but I think that John makes a couple of valid points about a contract.
And potential pending arbitration.
Has nothing to do with it. Has nothing to do with it.
I mean, I think everybody should.
I beg to differ.
Has nothing to do with it. Whether we staff 4 or 5 career people has no bearing on the fact that we need to find a way to add some augmentation force to the fire department. We can't sustain with 16. We won't sustain with 20 for very long. It's just numbers. We won't do it.
I think we can do this without a resolution. Just go up. I mean, no, unless you're planning on hiring a consultant.
No, the council needs to be clear on you're either authorizing this or you're not. We'll come up with a plan how we're going to do it. Consultant or in-house, we'll bring you the plan. But council needs to decide on this. We don't have the staff time to just say, well, we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. We need council to make a decision. Are we studying these things or are we not?
So far, we're not.
We finished the vote?
She was,
So far, was it
I think she was on Scamperly.
Scamperly?
I vote no.
Mayor Scowley,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
denied.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Steve Jelly.
A resolution to develop a formal plan to request the St. Lawrence County Sheriff's Office submit a proposal to assume law enforcement services in the city of Ogdensburg. The plan to be submitted by August 1st, 2022.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
Discussion.
So,
How have the conversations with the county gone thus far since this first developed and outside of the media events?
so what I would hope is that, as this progressed, maybe, the conference of mayors and maybe the villages, from Kent, Governor Warren, Messina, maybe they would all start considering this. And what we would all do is, and there would be no police service loss and no police laid off, we would start a large Broward County, a large sheriff department with hope, better policy, with greater force, and at a cost that we can afford and afford long term. Because you will run out of money a few years down the road for that police department and that fire department. So this is a study, and then, like I say, we could talk with the villages and see, just think, so, investigating work, there's a fight in Augsburg. So that force could send extra personnel there. You're not gonna have, what do we have, 12, 15 police chiefs? You're only putting your money into policemen out there patrolling, providing safety. And I think we could get better public safety as a possibility. I think this is a good thing to look at. I think it's a good thing to see if the villages will consider this. And like, I mean, Broward County, we're down in Miami. We all watch that on TV. I mean, it could be an amazing large for the same money.
I'm all for a local government efficiency grant or a shared services grant and working cooperatively with the county and the villages and the towns. And if everybody wants to sit down at the table and say, St. Lawrence County, if you could provide one officer a night, in each of these villages and that, then you might have the votes to actually, on the legislature. But written this way,
this is the study. So
No, it's to develop a formal plan.
let's not use the word.
and I just
We would have a plan. We would have a plan to talk to the legislature. No, and especially if their legislators or villages like this idea also. But I think if you really want to, it's similar to dispatchers. It doesn't make sense for everybody to have a dispatcher, and so our people, we don't call 911, we used to call 7 digits. Now we call 10 digits. Does that make sense when you're in danger to call 10 digits? Or I mean, it's and duplicating the cost. It's just it's a study to look and see if it's a good idea.
So I think Councilor Powers asked the question, has this been discussed at all with the county sheriff?
No, of course not. The resolution's clear. It says to ask council to develop a plan to take to the sheriff to ask him to do it. So
Has it been discussed with the
It
county
says the
legislature?
city manager is hereby directed to develop a formal plan to request to the St. Lawrence County Sheriff's Office.
And this is something that possibly the Financial Restructuring Board may help.
I don't, yeah, I'm certain any government efficiency, program, we've got the ability to apply for financial assistance. Correct. This again it's a study. It is asking us to figure out a new way to doing business other than doing the business the same way we've been doing it, that we've not been able to afford the last decade and we're not going to be able to afford in the coming decade without raising taxes.
What's the police chief have to say about
This is where our money is.
in the unions?
Councilor Scamperly, we're the leadership that has to balance the books. Of course, the police department, the people want what they want. We've got to figure out a way to afford proper law enforcement protection. And that we're not getting today. I mean, let's be real, council, what we're doing today. On any given day, we have 2 people on the streets here. 2. It's really not enough. Not even close for the types of calls, the volume of calls they're dealing with. So the police department's an example, really, that this council's got to get serious about it and fund it properly and support it, or come up with a new way of doing business that we can actually provide law enforcement here. Because having 2 officers on the road in this city really is, we're clamoring about having 5 firemen on duty. But we don't flinch at the fact that there's 2 cops on duty most of the time here after dark. We don't flinch at that. Do you? Well, what have we done about it? What have we done about it?
That would lend the question.
Because we couldn't afford it. How are we affording?
That would lend the question to the county sheriff asking whether or not they have the resources to be able to handle such a load.
I didn't say we weren't going to pay for it. And that's exactly what we're going to do, is we're going to ask them to study it.
I'd like
We're
to
gonna
see a
ask them to
formal
take a look.
plan. Before we send anything over to the county, I'd like to see what this plan consists of and what it looks like.
That's why you.
That's what it
You're
says
going to
here.
develop it. This
That's what it says.
resolution, the language calls that you're hereby directed to develop a formal plan to request to the St. Lawrence County Sheriff's Office.
Submit a proposal. Keep reading.
Hereby directed to develop therefore be it resolved that the city manager is hereby directed to develop a formal plan to request the St. Lawrence County Sheriff's Office submit a proposal to law enforcement. Let's look at this proposal. What's this plan? Let's look at this proposal and have a conversation with the sheriff and his undersheriff to see whether it's feasible. And if it isn't, what can we look at to maybe do that? But going forward,
We will. This resolution says do just that. And the mayor, I think, is expanding upon, perhaps it should be the larger group. We should try to involve everyone.
It sounds like a good thing for the conference of mayors to discuss. And if there was like a group that, wanted to, write a local efficiency grant, the governor's office would love this. And if you had the votes on the board, then you could, then you can actually have a resolution to apply for it. And you got so-and-so on board in Messina, you got so-and-so in Canton, but I just don't like this
Develop
approach.
a plan, we take it to the conference of mayors. The financial restructuring board could help with a lot of expenses.
And it says to assume law enforcement services. I mean, I'm not prepared to make that decision tonight.
It's develop the plan. You want to do an amendment.
Which says that
Develop a
this is
plan.
what we want. This is what we
Develop a
want.
plan.
So.
And do an amendment, to do a plan.
That's what it says. I think if there was broad support for it and it was presented in a unified way with the funding in hand, you're going to hire a consultant or something. Then it would be worth looking at.
I think this was looked at years ago
What do you bring?
and it didn't go anywhere. But, it's not to say they couldn't look at it. At least it's just like the other one, hiring a consultant or having somebody look at it with a different set of eyes isn't a bad thing. Doesn't mean you have to do anything. You might find that it's definitely not the thing to do and you need to go a whole different direction. I'm not sure, but one thing's for sure, everybody up here has a different opinion on all of it. And we just keep, bumping heads over it. And it's like, just let the consultants do the thing. And then if it comes back that, who knows, maybe it's something that everybody's happy with. It might be just something strange that pops out of there that no one thought of and said, but again,
there's not a dollar value associated with it. A consultant's going to cost you probably $50,000 to $100,000 to study it. So I'm not approving that tonight.
The staff could work on it.
I don't want our staff working on
The other
that.
thing is, when I was down in Florida, it was on the news at 12, the community was
Hire a consultant.
going over to the sheriff.
No money.
So, okay, anything else?
I think John makes some valid points. I'm definitely open to the idea, but it's a little too early yet.
I mean, we're kind of taking time from Steve, from the city manager and proposing a plan when this might be able to just kind of be kicked off in a conversation. We got a resolution coming up here shortly that's calling for annual meetings. Could be done in one of those meetings, not necessarily exhausting time and resources and formulating a plan, when you might be able to sit down with some law enforcement experts and leaders and pound something out maybe. I'm not saying we can't discuss it later down the road, but ultimately
Everything seems to be down the road. I think this is good to develop a plan and then see if everyone likes it.
Well, time and resources is money, and we're all talking about money. So, that's and I think that the city manager's use could be in a conversation with the county might be able to yield the same results. Who knows? Never know.
Yeah, I think it's premature.
Would you do it if there was consent? I mean, dollar? If there was a plan where there was broad support, like the other villages.
Or consult.
And if you know, were applying for a grant to do that cooperatively with the county to study, you know, having one law enforcement entity, then I think you'd be better prepared to actually present something. I think this is just, it's too nebulous and there's no money associated with it.
I think the financial restructuring board would help. We did the resolution. I think we would get assistance. So, are we done with discussion?
Mhm.
Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Kennedy,
No.
Counselor Powers,
No.
Counselor Reese,
No.
Counselor Scamperly,
No.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
denied.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Stephen Jolly.
Resolution to develop a formal plan to request the Development Authority of the North Country submit a proposal to assume responsibility for the wastewater treatment, for the water treatment and wastewater treatment facilities in the city of Augsburg beginning in 2023. Plan to be submitted by June 1st, 2022.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
So we talked about this a few times. Dank proposing a plan. Do they have a plan yet? I thought they were just going to give us one.
We have to request it.
Okay. So I got no problem. It's not going to cost us anything, right? It's going to cost Dank, and then we can evaluate it. What I really think needs to happen is before we make too many decisions, we need to have some public hearings and see what the city wants, things like that, and present a lot of facts on this. But I know we talked before about Dank throwing a proposal at us and what that actually means, not just on a monetary value, but control over our own wastewater and water and what's happened in other communities and how they feel about it. So I think there's a lot more aspects to this, but I'll support this.
How does this impact our DPW employees?
Well, again, without a formal proposal, Counselor, from them, I don't know. I guess I'd like to make the just general broad assumption that our employees are all highly trained, highly certified. To assume something like this, Dank would have to hire employees. But again, part of their proposal would tell us that.
So this is the possibility of terminating our employees in hopes of them possibly being hired.
I doubt very seriously that that would be a plan that I would sell this council and do. And I think any plan that Dank proposes would need to, imply the assumption of our employees. I don't think there's any intent here to put people out of work. I think our intent with this one is like everything else. Our water and sewer fund are in trouble, haven't been funded, properly for years, money taken away from them, trying to exhaust all possible ways of doing business. There's no private sector necessarily in this area to go to see if there's a cheaper, more efficient solution. So the Development Authority is the only other place that we can bounce off our way of doing business with someone else doing it and seeing if what we're doing is most efficient, great. If it's not, then we need to look at those. Our water and sewer fund are in the same level of distress that our general fund is. There's not near enough money in either one for them to pay for future repairs, rehabilitation, et cetera. We're bonding $35-40 million now in sewer because we didn't save properly, and we're gonna end up bonding very similar in water. So this is just, again, this is an avenue to look at. Is there any way to reduce our operating costs? We've made significant changes in the last couple of years in the cross training of our employees and the cross staffing. I believe that likely we're highly competitive, if not doing it as efficiently as it can be doing it. This is a way for council to look at that and understand that, because there will be impacts this year to the sewer rate with taking on the bond debt. And the same thing is going to occur in the next year, 2, 3, 4 years with water. There's going to be increases in the rates. So for council to be able to affirm to all the rate payers that we're doing it as economically as we can possibly do it. That's the intent of all these resolutions is, are we doing things in the most economical manner that we can versus doing what we've been doing.
Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Powers,
No.
Counselor Reese,
Yeah, just to explain my vote, I'm not a fan of giving up control over something as important as water and sewer, and then all of a sudden you become a council that can't respond to its citizens. You know, it's done with other things, obviously gas and electric and everything, but I'm just not a fan of it, so I've never been a fan of it. I vote no.
What do you vote?
I didn't hear
No.
you, sir. Thank you. Counselor Samperly,
You know, we've asked Dank for this report over and over again. And I think when it comes down to it, I think right now, if I was to vote on Dank taking over, it would be a no vote. But I'm not going to go back on my word here. We started this under Sarah and just to take a look at it and see what they had to offer. So yeah, I'll support it.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
No.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Susan Jelly.
Resolution to request a regularly scheduled quarterly meeting for the St. Lawrence County Chairman of the Board of Legislators and County Administrator with the Ogdensburg City Mayor and City Manager.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
I like this. I think it'll be good. Life gets busy and, you know, next thing you know, you haven't talked, you haven't met for a while. Like Bill Sheridan. Yeah, I think it would be very beneficial.
These meetings be posted or scheduled in advance so that we all know they're taking place?
Sure. Staff can put an email out to everybody.
Have you guys been denied a meeting when you've asked for one? Because it seems to me like in years past, this has always just sort of happened. Well, I mean, city managers call up county administrators like all the time, probably every day.
Well, like I say, life gets busy and then the next thing you know, time has passed. This gets, you know, this gets you a date in the calendar and, you know, goes by and you keep working on it. And there's a lot to work on. No, I like it. And, it's good. Hopefully it'll be good for building things too.
I mean, if we need a resolution to schedule meetings, I suppose I'll support it, but I mean, I tend to follow where Dan's going here. I mean, these meetings should be taking place on a regular basis to begin with, but I don't know why we need a resolution for it, but.
I think that's exactly why I need the resolution, because they're not taking place. I think that's the whole point. The answer is no, they're not taking place. We need to do it. Certainly some fault on our part, probably some fault on the county's part, some contentious issues that have probably driven a wedge with some things, but it shouldn't stop the leadership from meeting this. Just puts a stake in the ground that from here forward, all managers, mayors, et cetera, should be making attempts to do that. So this is exactly it. There's a lot of chatter from council from time to time about not being involved in things. So here's the opportunity for council to say, these are the things we want. These are the things we want to occur. And so that's what we're doing tonight.
And sales tax is settled and property tax will be settled soon, one way or another. We did both sides accept whatever happens with the property tax and no, I like it. I like, we're glad to, have a scheduled meeting and start getting back together.
Has Ms. Doyle or anybody, Mr. Sheridan, agreed to this or talked to you about it?
We'll do the resolution and send it to them and, it's not binding on them, but it just shows them our intent. They're rebuilding relationships. I'm sure they'll respect good it can.
So just for clarity, because this council likes to use these things, and I can see you're using one now for your advantage. The mayor is not a standalone entity.
Say
He's
your
by and large,
comments, man.
he's a member of council. I'm speaking. Thank you, Councilor Powers. He's a member of council. So this is council saying that they want a designated member of the council to meet on a regular basis with the chairman of the county board of legislators. This is giving council the ultimate authority to determine things that council wants done and wants represented. If the mayor went and met on his own and didn't tell anybody, you'd be complaining that you didn't know what was going on, who was keeping who other briefs. So this is making sure that council has authenticated this, said they want it to occur. We'll make the request to the county, not telling the county, we'll make the request that we put this down, and then we provide a report when we have these meetings to what goes on. And council then has the opportunity to know when the meetings are, so they can send the mayor with the things that they want to make sure that he passes on to the chairman. Just makes good sense, puts us in order, and everybody understands what we're doing, and there's a process.
Very positive.
Transparent process.
Yeah, I'm fair with that. You know what? Maybe amend the resolution to include somebody, a biased party, to keep the minutes in there so that there's no confusion as to he said, she said, or whatever the case may be. I'm down with that.
So
Official set of minutes.
with minutes kept, whereas minutes should be kept. So I'll second that.
So grab an amendment, keep minutes. Kathy, could you call the roll on that?
This would be to amend. Counselor Reish,
I apologize. I guess I missed the amendment.
You want to keep,
Keep minutes on a meeting if they have one.
if we go over to the
If the county agrees to have a meeting, yeah, they're just gonna keep minutes on it.
No, I don't think that's necessary.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
No.
Counselor Dilaba,
No.
Counselor Fisher,
No.
Counselor Kennedy.
I would agree to minutes, that's fine. Yes.
Why wouldn't you?
Counsel Powers,
Yes.
denied.
Can you vote on, call the roll on the resolution?
On the original resolution, yes, sir. Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Reish,
No, I just don't think it's necessary to pass a resolution.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Stephen Kelly.
A resolution to instruct the city manager to immediately request the St. Lawrence County Administrator participate in a joint feasibility study to merge active city employees into the county's self-insured health insurance program.
I'll move that.
A second.
So, clarification. So the city used to have a self-insurance health, or a self-insured health program.
We did.
Didn't work.
Didn't work.
Would this be the exact same type of thing where the city is paying for self-insurance?
Yes, it would work very similar to how our comp plan works. It would be their self-insurance plan though. So we would ask them to study what would the impact be of bringing our people into that? What would our contribution need to be to that? So as we look at, annually, the way to provide healthcare the most efficient means possible. What you just said, Councilor Scampley, I agree with. I don't, at this point, with the city's fiscal, with the city's fiscal status, I don't see us returning to a self-pay program or even a hybrid program that would require us, setting aside a significant amount of money to kick it off. But the county's program is going. So similar to the workman's comp program, they would administer it, they would run it, and we would, let's just say perhaps pay the claims that come in like we do our workers' comp now. So I simply want to look at how they administer it, how they do it. Is there room to add, our active employees? First of all, are they open to it like they do the workers' comp? And would it be beneficial? Would the coverages be similar to what we have now? Again, we've got some, defined bargaining agreements at the moment to talk about the benefits, et cetera. So this is a discussion that needs to start sooner rather than later. If you were looking at a change in the benefits, that would have to coincide with the next contract provision. So just would like to have some authority to talk about, again, is there potential to look at this? Again, it's really just adding us to a much larger group insurance program.
Is the county health insurance plan online? I mean, is it readily available?
I don't know the answer to that. I would assume probably not, but I don't know that.
I'm thinking that it would be if it were part of any contracts that they would have with anybody, would clearly be out there with any of the county employees. I don't know. I'm just asking. I mean, you know, if we can obtain that information and compare it with the knowledge or with the information that we have related to health insurance, and with contracts coming up in what, 2020, end of 25.
4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm assuming it's readily available. I don't know why it wouldn't be. Ours is.
You're right now, Counselor, you're just talking about the benefits, what they pay out. I'm ultimately talking just as the county even open to bringing us in, to adding, you know, the administration to it, et cetera. So it's kind of twofold here. The county's part in it, being the administrator of the plan. What would that entail? Excuse me, versus what would the cost payouts be?
Well, you're going to know is the plan of who they've got the contract with, you know, who the insurance carrier is, and who's providing the plan to the county, and you'd be able to.
No, so different. So
I mean,
different.
it would take some work. I understand that, but you know, I mean, you know.
So they're self-insured. They don't have a carrier. They have an administrator. Again, very similar to how the workers' comp is done. There's no carrier. There's an administrator that manages the program, the claims in and out, and then we pay our claims as they come in.
Yeah, all these resolutions are to go forward, and a lot of them are beyond our time.
This one likely would be.
Yeah, it's gaining knowledge for decisions down the road for people other than us will make. So.
Sounds like a return to self-insured. I don't know. I'd like to motion we table this, get some more information on where we want to be, what the county's doing, and then make a decision on whether or not we want to look at merging. I thought the county had a different plan like we have, and it would drive prices down for all employees because we're entering a bigger group. Whereas this year looks like we're going back to self-insured health insurance. So, which didn't work at all because it was very unpredictable. I'd like to table this and get some more info.
Do any of the municipalities consolidate employees now, like share, like they group them together to save money, to reduce costs?
So some of the carriers group smaller clients together to form larger group rates. Again, and we're currently working with our consultant right now on plans like that. This is just another option to look at. Again, a larger government looking at saying, what is your plan? What would the cost to the city be? What would the benefits to the employees be if we were to be moved into your plan as you have it? We have a lot of data right now. We've done a lot of research where we are with the current health plan, our current consultant and another consultant we've been working with to give us some competitive program differences. So we have lots of data. We know what our claims look like. We know what our costs look like. Again, I don't see any feasible way for the city to be able to move to a self-insured program, at least not in the near term. I'm trying to explore all the other options. So we moved to insurance. We moved to insurance by and large because we didn't have the ability to self-fund with the unpredictability of the claim. So the insurance allows us to pay the premium. We know what it's going to be. Everyone's covered. However, we are paying for insurance. So it is not the most economical way to do it. For us, it was the safest way to ensure continuity of care and coverage for our employees at a time when our budget was unpredictable and we couldn't afford to have the sways in what the claims could be. But that is certainly not the most efficient way to administer. So this again is just one more option I'd like to look at. Before I go asking the county for information or things, again, I'd like council to be behind that. As Councilor Powers said earlier, time is money. All things are staff time. If the council has no appetite for these things, there's no sense in the staff putting the time in it only to find out nobody had an appetite in council to do it. So this is one of those.
We discussed before, similar to the plan we have, The school system, St. Lawrence School Esposito, has a very similar plan. And we thought jumping in with them would be even more efficient and maybe getting the other villages and things like that and the county. And has there been any movement on that? Excuse me.
No, not that I'm aware of. And I did see it in some of the records. That was one of the options that was looked at when you ultimately switched, to go to the insurance. So
That's how we got here.
it is.
Really. I mean, we looked at so many different insurance plans.
Yeah, again, just keep in mind again, we're buying insurance just straight away. We're paying for insurance again. We know what the costs are. We live with the raises, the increases that come, but we know what the costs are. We budget for that. That's solidified. The self-pay option definitely has us moving in a different direction. I'm not, again, advocating that we would do it ourselves. I don't think, but I think looking at somebody who does a larger group and potentially joining that along with the other options that we're looking at is a benefit. And for that matter, talking again to whoever the school does, et cetera. I mean, we're trying to look at all the options. This is the one, again, this is the larger government. Again, talking of reducing redundancy or duplicative services. Is there a way to just piggyback onto what the county is doing?
So Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Just one more comment, if I can, real quick here. Just, the county is just, they're self-insured. I don't see the benefits to going back to that, and unless we're getting something from them that they're indicating going otherwise. And again, you're right, time is money, and you might be putting time into something that it's not going to be for consideration for us down the road. It wasn't feasible for us, self-insured before, and I don't know. It just.
We probably spend, excuse me, we probably spend in the neighborhood of 250 to 350,000 on plan administration. When you're buying insurance, you're paying for that. So there, again, the self-insurance pays for an administrator to do that, and you pay your claims. The data that we have now, and that's really what this is all based upon, is it a good time? And we're approaching a point where our claim, the premium we pay, for the last couple of years, we've been lower. That's why our insurance premium has not gone up the last 2 years, because the premium that we pay has been lower. In other words, we've paid, excuse me, we've paid less. They paid out less than we've paid to them. So no need to raise money on us, because our claims, they've made money on us. That won't continue. So again, when we're looking at the cost starting to, again, we're paying more, and they're paying more in claims than we are in premium. That will drive the premiums going up. So you're sort of always paying more. The difference is how much are you paying for administration? That's really what it amounts to. You're always going to pay for your costs, one way or the other. It's a checkup. You might not, it's a true up at the end of the year. You might not pay this year. You got them, they got you, but they'll true you up. The deal here is how much you're paying an insurance company to administrate it versus a plan that's being administered by a local government entity. Again, it's the very same thing we do with workers' comp. We don't have workers' comp insurance. We don't have a care. It is a self-funded plan by all those that participate in it. We paid a very small administration fee to the group triad that does the administration. They take in the claims and make sure the paperwork is processed, and they tell everybody what their costs were.
Thank you.
Okay, Kathy?
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
No.
Counselor Powers,
No.
Counselor Reish,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by Director of Planning and Development, Andrea Smith. Oh, you finally get up there.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with J.E. Sheehan Contracting Corporation. Whereas the city of Ogdensburg solicited bids for Ready Project SJ 163, also referred to as Maple City Trail Shoreline Resiliency Improvements. And whereas J.E. Sheehan Contracting Corporation, a New York State corporation having offices in Potsdam, New York, has proven their capacity and ability to perform the work to the city's satisfaction. Whereas Ramble Engineers, as the engineers representing the city of Ogdensburg, have reviewed the qualification statement EJCDC C-451 submitted by J.E. Sheehan and contacted references to discuss the contractor's capabilities and performance. And whereas Ramble is satisfied with J.E. Sheehan's appears to be qualified and has the experience necessary to perform the work of the contract, and Ramble recommends that the city award contract number 1 to J.E. Sheehan at a total bid price of $2,061. Now therefore be it resolved that the city manager or his designee is authorized to enter into a contract with J.E. Sheehan Contracting Corporation for a sum not to exceed $2,061 for the Maple City Trail shoreline resiliency improvements. Be it further resolved that expenses for this project will be charged to Ready Project SJ 163 and capital account H876001.518.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
This is great news. Price came in and a good number for us. Good contractor, in fact, there was a few good contractors, all of them. I know we all worried that it was gonna be higher. It was gonna be over the state estimate. The costs going up, but this came out good for us.
Came in less, didn't it?
The engineer's estimate for construction was 2.5 million.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The grant award is 2 million.
Oh.
Or sorry, the grant award is 1.9. The total project cost was estimated at 2 million. So there still is a city share over the 5% of ready costs, but it's much less than what the engineers had projected.
Yeah, pretty scary, the numbers were going up.
No change orders.
That says no informalities here. So, it says no informalities. So they're bidding the same project and
Hopefully there won't be any change orders.
yeah.
Andrea, I make sure they're right. Yeah. Any other discussion?
Mayor, just so council's clear, so $161,000, right? 100 is our match. Is that our match? Was 100 and then the 61,000 over the grant amount?
Yeah.
Yep. So 161,000 is our contribution to that. It's not in the 2022 budget. So it's something we'll either be looking, depending on how the project's execution time goes, whether we'll have to modify the budget to make our contribution, or something that'll have to be, put in the 2023 budget. So as Andrea briefed earlier, one of the things we've not been doing effectively is when these are approved, where is our share of the money coming from? We've kicked that down the road and not included that in budget. So Angela and Andrea will be presenting, I hope, at the next meeting, if not the one after that, exactly the status of the capital fund, how much we're going to have to put in that to make it whole for all the projects that are currently out there and the things that over the years we've committed our 100,000 or 25,000, et cetera, to. It is definitely deficient. So again, while this is great news, just understand it's 161,000 contribution right now from the city that we'll have to determine where that money comes from, whether this year's budget somewhere, or again, we have to budget for it in 2023 as a capital expenditure.
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Powers. Counselor Powers,
Sorry, yes.
thank you. Counselor Reish,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly.
Yes.
Approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Stephen Jelly.
A resolution to develop a formal analysis and recommendation to determine if the city of Augsburg should pursue reestablishing itself as a town or village in lieu of city status, planned to be submitted by 1 November 2022. Whereas the Augsburg City Council is desirous of reviewing a formal analysis regarding reestablishment of the city as a town or village in lieu of city status, now therefore be it resolved that the city manager is hereby directed to develop a formal analysis and recommendation to determine if the city of Augsburg should pursue reestablishing itself as a town or village in lieu of city status by 1 November 2022.
I'll move this to get the discussion.
I'll second it.
So when I look at those videos of Sarah, I believe she came up with this concept because she wasn't seeing the will of the council to make hard decisions. And I think we have moved forward on sales tax, and we are moving forward on property tax jurisdiction. We are moving forward on the dispatchers. So I think we've addressed a lot of those things, and we have, through attrition, no one's been laid off. The departments are small. And so right now, for this year, they were managed. So, let's have more discussion and then vote, see? It's gonna be-
Been through this twice. I'm not voting for this.
Voted against it first year.
I did. We looked at it, then I voted against it.
So this is a study, right? Just doing a study.
It's a,
I couldn't find where it had actually been voted on. I saw multiple discussion. I couldn't find where it had been actually voted on to pursue or not pursue.
I think it was brought to us at under Sarah, it was brought to us as by the commission, the charter commission. Fred Bean, I think, brought it to us. And then prior to Sarah, I don't know if we voted on it officially. We looked at it, I think, under art maybe. But it didn't have support. It just seemed like Powers brought up the point earlier about so much state money wasn't available when you do it. Sales tax alone makes it not feasible. You're gonna lose millions.
yeah, we fought so hard for sales tax, and if you became a village or a town, more likely a village, then you'd lose $4.7 million in revenue because it wouldn't be a city anymore. And you'd be at the mercy of the county legislature on what they want to give you.
Yes.
So, which,
Definitely at their mercy.
yeah, so.
Yeah, we all know how well that
They
goes.
may
Their mercy.
some of it over time, and they may take it off the
Oh, yeah.
town's bill to them.
And if the aid that we get from the state, I don't know, but I'm sure that it's based on the fact that we are a city, and that's why we get more than other communities do. I don't know what the calculations are, but I just think it'd be a huge gaping hole, like lose all kinds of money. So I don't see any
Grant opportunities even.
Yeah.
Yeah, by not being a city status.
Because if we had not done the things, we might have had to consider this, but seeing it now, I think we made the moves that are necessary for now. We do get,
No,
I believe it's $4 million more than the village receives in sales tax from the state.
Yeah.
$4 million.
Huge.
Now, remember that $4 million that we have a higher budget, they provide trash and sidewalk, they snow blow sidewalks for the whole community. With $4 million less.
No, I don't know about that. I drive through Messina. I'll tell you what, I don't even know if they know what a snowplow is because the streets are, they got snow potholes.
We have the best
Look like
pizza
you're
down.
driving in a pasture.
So, Kathy, could you call the roll, please?
Counselor Dilaba?
Yes.
Counselor Fisher?
No.
Counselor Kennedy?
No.
Counselor Powers?
No.
Counselor Reese?
No.
Counselor Scamperly?
No.
Mayor Skelly?
I'm gonna vote.
I'm sorry, sir.
I'm gonna vote no.
Denied.
So this brings us to old business. And we will begin with the Director of Planning and Development, Andrew Smith.
at your first April meeting, you all discussed some correspondence you received from Mr. Swanson regarding his desire to purchase a portion of Paper Curtis Street. And so I just wanted to let you know, so initially this request was reviewed by staff as well as the city manager, and I believe the city manager responded to him stating that the city was disinterested in dissolving more of Paper Curtis Street. And he has made an appeal to council for you all to consider his request. So the issue that you have to consider when you're considering his request, which again, staff's recommendation as well as the recommendation from the city manager is not to dissolve additional portions of Paper Curtis Street. But this property, the property surrounding it, is located in the city's single family zoning district. All of the properties that abut Paper Curtis Street are located in the city's single family zoning district that has a minimum lot size of 75 by 75. So no parcel with frontage on Paper Curtis Street can, the dissolution cannot result in less than 75 feet of frontage. So the numbers that you have on that very small, I apologize, I'm looking at a printed out diagram, are actually incorrect. There was an error with the measuring tool from the dank IMA, but you also do have the tax map, which again is very, very small and probably hard to read. But Mr. Swanson's property has 160 feet of frontage on Paper Curtis Street. He also has a corner lot on Anthony and William. So he has frontage on 2 other actual developed streets. There are 3 parcels behind Mr. Swanson's property that have frontage on the Paper Street that we are not allowed by law to landlock. We have to provide them access, even though the street is not developed, it is their only public access. So the parcel immediately behind Mr. Swanson's property must maintain at least 75 feet of frontage, which means if the council wants to, it could go forward with the dissolution of approximately 105 feet of Paper Curtis Street, and the right-of-way is approximately 60 feet wide. That would require a public hearing and a survey, and then ultimately the parcel that would be created would be sold at public auction.
That wouldn't
Those
deny
3
anybody access to their own property.
The parcel due north of Mr. Swanson then would have 75 feet of frontage on Paper Curtis, and it would have 90 feet of frontage would now be Mr. Swanson's property, which would be a bit strange, but by law, you could do that.
So if you wanted,
But if you dissolve the street, then you don't comply with the requirements because the street's not there anymore.
You can only dissolve a maximum of 105 feet by 60 feet to maintain 75 feet of frontage on the Paper Street.
Right, but if we dissolve the street, then there is nothing to comply with.
You may not by law dissolve Paper Curtis Street because there are 3 parcels that only have frontage on Paper Curtis Street. You would prevent them from having access to their property. You cannot lawfully do that.
so that would be the only property that you would have left that could actually happen, to dissolve that one portion and not deny the other people access.
If you dissolved 100 feet, 105 feet, you could no longer dissolve any more of Paper Curtis until those lots were combined with other lots that would have frontage on Proctor Avenue, which you cannot require them to be combined. We don't have an ordinance that requires them to be combined.
And those 3 lots are owned by the same people, even though they're lots, I think.
No, that's
They're
not
different
correct.
people? Are,
One lot is owned by a different person.
so is he interested in going forward with what?
I was asked to present to you what you could do. I have not had correspondence directly with Mr. Swanson, so.
And keep in mind, it really isn't, so as you remember, we've dealt with many of these. It really, at this juncture, is sort of irrelevant what the requester is asking for, because all we're asking council to do is dissolve it, then it has to go to auction. So that's been the problem with all of these, is the person we're talking to, we start having discussions sort of like we're negotiating or what do they want. If somebody else comes in and bids and gets the property, they don't get it. So that's part of the deal with this. And I'm not certain there won't be some other people here for obvious reasons that might come and join the fun in this. And then Mr. Swanson loses out altogether. We sold a parcel of property that is of not of much value to sell and could probably make things worse than it is now. So it's not like it's an arm's length transaction. We're trying to sell one we possessed on for taxes or something. This has to go to auction. So that's the only concern with all these.
You have to be fair to the other landowners.
I can't see the map, so I can't comment on it. It's hard to tell how it ends up.
So the dimensions are 105 by 60. That's what you'd be able to dissolve. It would be off of the western portion of Paper Curtis Street, in east 105 feet, north 60 feet, west
And his
105
request
feet.
was, what was the request for?
I don't have that. That was sent directly to the city manager. You all received that in your packet for the April 9th meeting. I believe that I was out with COVID.
So this 480 by 60 is not correct?
Correct. There was an error there isn't 482 feet there, which upon looking at it is pretty obvious, but I didn't pick that up when I was sending it to you. It's an error in the mapping system. So the dimension is 105 feet, not 482 feet.
So if somebody else bought that would.
It's
that would
not
be good for me.
and it's not a developable lot. It does not meet the minimum standards, being 60 feet.
And we can't sell it just.
Correct.
It will never be developed. There'll probably never be a home there because we'll never put a street in, but these are the odd quirks that you end up in, so.
So I mean, vice the opinion that these paper streets are here because the city never took action to get rid of them. That in most cases now, we tried to go through the last year or so and bring you all the ones that just made sense, but most of the rest of them exist, for a reason, because if we can't dissolve it, because we'd be landlocking somebody's parcel. So I mean, we go through the map often trying to bring these or identify them to people that it might make sense. But again, most of the parcels in the city that are in this paper street status are there for a reason.
So he would have to get together with the other property owners and devise a plan where they share the street basically and say they don't want it? Or is it still going to be a case where state law says that you can't do it?
Well, Counselor, the city can dissolve up to 105 feet on Paper Curtis. That is the extent that you can dissolve by law without landlocking other parcels. I'm not sure what I'm not being clear about.
But if you got together with the other landowners and they all agreed it was okay to landlock, we still wouldn't have authority to violate the law and landlock them. I think that's what you were asking. If everybody,
That's what I was asking.
if everybody agreed it was okay, it still wouldn't allow us to override the law.
That's what I was.
If he convinces those 3 property owners, one to sell to the adjacent property owner on Proctor, and that person to combine that lot with theirs by deed, dissolving all interior lot lines for all intents and purposes, and the other 2 to combine theirs by deed, dissolving all interior lot lines for all intents and purposes, then the city could dissolve the entire paper street and sell it at public auction.
So he has some work to do then.
Quite a bit, I'd say.
Unless he just wants 105 feet. Unless he just wants 105 feet.
Unless you all would like to dissolve 105 feet.
But that doesn't mean he's gonna get it anyway.
Correct.
So
In Atlanta.
you could dissolve
It would
75 feet.
Landlock it.
That's why we're giving it.
I don't know what he was asking for, and I don't know how much 105, whether that's half of it or the whole thing, or whether he'd be interested, so I can't really vote on it.
You don't have a resolution to vote on it. I think he was asking for the entire paper street behind his property, which would be 160 feet.
I thought he had an accommodation of 75 feet, so the person would have access to their lot.
Well, that's this proposal. That's what I'm telling you can do. I don't believe that's what he asked for.
Well, it'd be good if someone could communicate that with him and get back to us and let us know if,
So, any other old business? Does anyone else have any old business? This brings us to new business.
Oh, sir, under old business, we provided the FOIL tally update.
I just have one under old business, if I can, real quick here. I know it's been talked about and with the new rollout of some of the ARPA monies going out for some rehabilitation work. Have we put any thought or any ideas into some kind of a housing program? I know that myself and Councilor Reese have brought it up a couple of times, with some additional ARPA monies, if we don't exhaust all of it. And forgive me for not knowing what may be left of any of it going forward, of whether or not we can have some kind of a comprehensive program to assist to rehab and, fulfill a larger need other than a $5,000 allotment of some sort. Or if there's been any conversations with the department heads related to any kind of a housing program to assist in rehabbing some of the older beautiful homes within the city that are in dire need of assistance, and people that are struggling in the employment world and getting by. So.
Yeah, that's why I keep bringing up community development block grant and ask for Dank to be here or the planning board so we get a grant in this year, and they're due July 30th. And like I say, it covers infrastructure, housing, economic development. And in addition to that, if you take a look at the summary of NICOM budget, I've never seen so much money being thrown around this state budget. I mean, there's all kinds of grant opportunities coming up. And, there's funds for Restore New York. There's new money for land banks. There's funds for Bridge New York that could be used on Lafayette Street Bridge. There's parks money. We have a need for parks money down at there's not only the downtown revitalization initiative, there's a new program called New York Forward for smaller downtowns. So, and all these things, or most of them, not all of them, including CDBG, will be due on July 30th. So I hope we're focused on that and putting in a lot of application and paying consultants to put applications in.
It is amazing the money. I saw that, and there'll be a lot of hands out. I'm sure staff's working.
We are. Andrea, just like last year, I'll have a brief on after she's done the review of the grants, what she recommends we move forward just like we did last year, so council can say yay or nay on that. And I'll just also say all the programs are good. Just I want to drive home. 20 grant applications is fine. That'll be 20 matches that we have to put in there. We have no money in the 2022 budget right now. Not $1 for capital improvement, not $1. And we barely balance the budget, not $1. So we just have to think about those. I have Andrea put in 20 grant applications and she stones them all. And then we have $500,000, $1 million in matching funds that we've got to come up with. Where's the money coming from?
I'll prove that all night long.
You'll prove it from what fund, Counselor?
90.
From what fund, Counselor, will you prove it from?
Let's talk
We're
sales tax,
$1.3
let's
million
talk,
gap right now. Okay.
I'll borrow for it, Steve.
You'll borrow for matching money?
Yeah. 90% funding with 10% matching. I'll do it all night long.
You were concerned last month about the amount of debt per person. I'm glad you're ready to borrow.
You didn't want to go over the ready. Okay, so new business. Does anyone have new business?
So new business, actually I didn't until Mr. McNamara showed up tonight. And he stated, I think he called in a while back. Is he still here? I think he called in a while back and we couldn't hear him. He was on the microphone. But tonight he said that he was arrested for trespassing and the city attorney was used in his case. He had some questions. How come the city attorney was used in the case? Represent another individual. I'm not going to name names. And I'd like an example when this was done before. So is that accurate? Do we know? Can we get an update on this? And answer those questions that I think he
It's a law enforcement matter that was handled appropriately by law enforcement in the court. I will get what information I can to present to council. There is a bona fide reason why the city attorney represented the city in that matter. But I would say it's also then appropriate for executive session for the council if you want to intercede in a matter that's already been adjudicated by the court. I can't get involved in every decision that a judge makes. The city judge is my judge. I didn't. So it's not a. It's not a. Yeah. Yeah. So a frequent customer leaving from our police department right now, I'm not going to continue to engage with that. So he's been disruptive in City Hall. If it continues, he'll be removed.
Well, I don't know if Dan asked, but I mean, from what I understand, our city attorney was used in a potential prosecutorial role. I mean, if that's the case, that's taxpayer money being used to have the city attorney act on behalf of the city. Why is that in order for executive session?
Councilor Powers, it's not even possible for the city attorney to be used in a prosecutorial role. I'm
just stating what Mr. McNamara said apparently earlier.
I think you know it's complete nonsense. It's like saying you tried somebody. The city attorney is not a member of the district attorney's office. How can you try?
On behalf of the citizen.
Yeah.
Actually, the attorney does do prosecutions because he's the one that does the OMCs. But I'm just saying, he does have an active role, and that's what he does. He's supposed to show up for dog tickets and such.
Just an update. Items for discussion.
I have a couple. You want to do council meeting? You want to do the number one first, and then I can wait?
Excuse me. At the request of the mayor, I've just provided the city council meeting absences. There was some discussion after the last meeting having to be canceled for lack of quorum, who's missed meetings, etc. I think it's clear here. So here it is. Ask and you shall receive. So here it is.
Thank you.
What does R and SP stand for?
Regular and special.
Their absences, but they're excused number one, or they're remote, right?
Gives a shit.
Nope, nobody remote.
Nice, Mike.
Come on.
Thank you.
Let's have some order.
I don't know, Councilor Powers. You commented to the media pretty lengthy on it. I think at some point you cared.
Yeah, like I said, I care less.
You like to comment when no one's listening. You like to tell your side of the story, apparently. So the whole story is getting told.
So do you, Steve. So do you. May I remind you who you work for?
Order.
Who would that be?
City Council. He talks to us like he thinks he runs over us.
I don't see that.
And you guys sit there and allow it. Well, I won't allow it.
Okay. I don't see that either. I see 13 times, so.
Okay. Any other items?
Yeah. So update on the SAFER grant. We've just been discussed a few times.
No, I think we'll probably hear something late summer, early fall.
Okay. And then the doodle poll results for City Hall. There are going to be any results that came out of that?
I will send that to council. I think she just tallied everything up today. I haven't reviewed it with her, but we'll tally it and send it to council. It'll be on the agenda for the next meeting as well.
Okay, then Manette Park, the building demo that needs to happen there, and what is going on with that? I know there's quite a few softball tournaments hopefully being scheduled for the year. I've had a couple of people who like to organize them reach out, and I know they don't seem like they're a lot, but they bring a lot of money into the community and people from outside coming in. So I just think that's where they're playing. It puts the wrong foot forward.
Yeah, to give the update.
So that's 11,000 Jefferson Avenue.
Yeah. I didn't know the exact address, but
11,000 Jefferson Avenue, which in my update, we did complete an asbestos survey. So that is on the list of several properties that we know requires demolition. We couldn't put the bid out to get pricing on that until we had our variance application approved, which was only approved on Friday afternoon.
Oh,
so
perfect.
I have spoken with the Women's Softball League. They are aware of the process. I do not have a date for when we expect that to come down. There is asbestos in the roofing materials and window glazing, so that is not something that can come down without hiring an asbestos abatement contractor and air monitor. So I don't suspect that will be coming down in the next 30 to 60 days, but I hope that it'll come down this construction season, as long as the pricing is acceptable to the council.
Thank you. And then where are we at the city beach and the water testing and all of that?
So I think we're in week 4 right now. So first 3 weeks, water sampling's been done. Samples were all really, really low, well under the threshold. So again, with 3 or 4 more weeks, we get close to that 6 or 7 week mark, then we'll give council an update on where we are with moving it forward. Hopefully the samples stay good.
Where are we at with lifeguarding as well? I noticed that we put it out again, so I didn't know, are we low on lifeguards or are we?
No, I think right now she's got an adequate number of applicants, so I think we're set good for that, and city employees for the summer. No. Mackenzie.
Oh.
And then when are we putting out summer camp information? I've had parents calling. When is it coming through the schools? Sorry, Andrea.
That typically doesn't go to the schools until the end of June, but we are actually, Mackenzie and I met on that last week. We're trying to get it out earlier in June.
I know there's some that are directly following school, so I think that's what some parents were inquiring about.
Yeah, historically, the city has sent that to schools. I think it's like the week of the 15th, so wherever that mid-June. We're striving to get that out the first week of June.
Okay.
Which would be the earliest they've ever been released. So
perfect. I will relay that on then to the parents who are asking.
That everything for? This brings us to citizen participation. At the same time, anyone attending would like to come up, you have 2 minutes.
I've read on social media posts and news outlets the opinion of the city manager, Mr. Jolly, titled "Fear and Fiction Do Not Save Cities, Real Leaders Do." I could not agree with you anymore than that statement. The city's in a crisis, and the crisis is a lack of leadership. What I witnessed tonight only solidifies my belief in this. The city manager mentality of fact versus fiction over the well-being of all taxpayers is exactly the reason Ogdensburg will take years to recover. The leaders have been allowed to manipulate, bully, and intimidate the taxpayers for their personal entitlement agendas. Would you call this fully transparent, high integrity, and decisive leadership? I would call it deception, corrupt, and self-serving. They aren't even humble enough to realize that they are a servant of the people that work for, and realize that it's a privilege to work for these people. According to news articles, tonight is the night we find out the fate of our city manager. Moving forward, what concerns me is the comments made by our city manager. Quoting, "Being that I have done all the things I was hired to do, I don't think I'll magically be the guy who moves us to the next level in the future of the city. I am not the leader they need moving forward." I truly believe, as a taxpayer, and it's my opinion, like all you have at that table, that the city manager's management style is not what this city needs to move forward in a positive direction. We need a manager that will challenge the majority. We need a manager that is connected to our community. We need a manager that respects the taxpayers. We need a manager that does not micromanage. We need a manager that does more listening than talking. We need a manager who is transparent and values transparency and is approachable and accessible. We need a manager that lives in the community and pays taxes.
Thank you,
The barriers that have been forged between the city and state leaders, St. Lawrence County and its leaders, Ogdensburg School District, Ogdensburg Bridge and Port Authority, does little to move our community forward. As a taxpayer, I'm looking forward to the decision of our city manager. And in cutting me off, you didn't cut the lady that was praising you before off after she went under 5 minutes. Thank you.
She was talking about children's lives. That's
I'm talking about the future of this community that I've lived here all my life.
You know, anyone else? Anyone remotely?
I apologize, Mayor, there was, but the person just put their hand down. Oh, they're back. The first individual is registered as Penny Sharrow, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted. It appears your line is open.
Good evening. I was resisting the urge to call in initially, but now I can't. Mr. Jelly, you do work for us. You work for the council, and you speak to the council and have no respect for them in the way you speak to them. You are an employee. You work for the citizens. You should not speak to Mr. Powers nor any other counselor in the manner you have been. Simple as that. You are not professional, and you have no right to sit there and speak to Mr. Reach, Mr. Powers, Mr. Scamperly, or Mrs. Kennedy in the fashion you have been. You are an employee. You are not the final say. Thank you.
I do not see any other hands raised.
So I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss proposed ending for current litigation. Second.
I'll second.
We do not anticipate, well, I have to do this on that. So Kathy, would you call the roll?
Counselor Fisher?
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Reach?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Mayor Skelly?
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba?
Yes.
Approved.
We do not anticipate action following the session. I will make a motion to adjourn from executive session.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?